What you think when I ask you? Can you still be a geek and rap too? Bet you think I'm a freak because I read and speak elite. Comic-Con is my scene and it seems I got mutant blood in my genes. I'm a Hulk smash everybody cause I'm a geek. I use thought bubbles when I speak. I'm a freak because she's a seat for me. I'm unique. There is only one of me. I'm complete, so I really don't care what you think of me. I'm a geek. I use thought bubbles when I speak. I'm a freak because she's a seat for me. I'm unique. There is only one of me. I'm complete, so I really don't care what you think of me.
I was old-fashioned, back when they called me absent. Now I'm so classic. You couldn't bully this fat kid if you was Mr. Fantastic. With Batman plus Doc, Randy, and Vandal Savage, it's half of your League of Assassins. I'm massively damaged, but managed to scavenge the truth. I don't have proof, but I am proof. And if the show gets stopped, it hits the fan and I kick the can. I'll be back on the street like RoboCop. I ain't Jim Duggan, I just hoe a lot. Reap what I sow or not, I'ma speak cause I'm a geek, but Jehovah got. Photoshop cats go viral. No athlete, but when my notepad leaks, I throw spirals. You must defeat these styles to stand a chance against these poems. Or go home and be a family man. Your Wang Chung, I do the Carlton dance. No disrespect, I spill it out for you in Comic Sans. I'm a geek. I use thought bubbles when I speak. I'm a freak because she's a seat for me. I'm unique. There is only one of me. I'm complete, so I really don't care what you think of me. I'm a geek. I use thought bubbles when I speak. I'm a freak because she's a seat for me. I'm unique. There is only one of me. I'm complete, so I really don't care what you think of me. I'm a geek. I use thought bubbles when I speak. I'm a freak because she's a seat for me. I'm unique. There is only one of me. I'm complete, so I really don't care what you think of me. I'm a geek. I'm a freak. I'm unique. I'm complete, so I really don't care what you think of me.
Hey there, Comic Clan. Welcome to the latest episode of Comics from the Cross, the greatest streamers you have never heard of. I, of course, am always your host, Cross. And yet again, I am not joined by Nitro. Nitro is still enjoying his vacation away. But I do have a very special guest with me today. As we're talking about Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man has joined us today on the podcast. Thank you for being here, man.
Hey everybody, yeah, pleasure to be here. I'm excited to talk about all my adventures as Spider-Man. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be a great time.
Definitely, and I love wearing, even the Spider-Man hoodie and stuff, showing off your own merchandise. I don't blame you at all, you need to do that advertising game.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do, and I'm here to just tell everybody who the real Spider-Man is. So,
That's it, man. That's it. That's all you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Not gonna lie, I'm tempted to keep this bit going just to see how long I can get him to keep wearing the mask for.
Yep, it's already getting foggy, so I'm gonna go ahead and
you can go ahead and take it off. I kind of keep this going and keep him with the mask on for longer.
And the reveal of Spider-Man is.
I'm joined by Isaac from the Infinity Bros. Thank you, Isaac, again for coming back in the show. The Infinity Bros, massive supporters of the channel. Been connected with them for a long time. If you've been watching the show for any length of time, you've no doubt heard us mention the Infinity Bros, and we're so glad that you could come back on and spend some time with us today talking about the Amazing Spider-Man movies, man.
Yeah, dude, I am super pumped to get going talking about these. I got a lot of things to say. I already was arguing with some people last night and today about stuff on Twitter, so
I did see some of that.
I've got all the thoughts. It's gonna be good. I'm excited.
Right, I hope I've got the channel right. So I've done a shout out. If you're not following the Infinity Bros here on Twitch already, that link is in the chat. Go ahead and click on that. Give them a follow. Show them some love. They're an amazing group of guys. For the few of them I've actually interacted with, I don't know if I've actually met and spoke with all of you all yet. I think I've talked back and forth with most of you.
You definitely were on the episode with Max, and you've probably interacted with Jarrett because he streams a little bit.
Yeah, I've talked with Jarrett
Marc,
when he does.
Robbie, and Zane are the other Infinity Bros. I don't know if you've met those guys, but yeah, they're around.
So yeah, I think I've met most of y'all, like either through Twitch, through y'all being on our podcast, or us being on yours. So the goal is to meet all of you eventually, at least. That's the first step.
Good. That's a good goal. I don't remember if it was you or if it was Lucas from the Good Morning Guys podcast. One of you guys were saying that you wanted to like collect all of us like Infinity Stones. I don't
Yes,
remember if it, was that you?
Yes, that's my
That
goal.
was
My goal is to be the Infinity Gauntlet and have all the
mean-
Infinity Bros together on one show. That is my goal.
Robbie's in chat and he says that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, I see him.
We'll
Robbie, it's going to happen. I didn't say it's going to happen soon. At some point, I will make it happen.
Someday before we all die.
Like I'm at the start of my podcast game here. I can go a while for this.
I mean,
this could
yeah,
be years in the future.
We could both be going for like 60+ years with this podcasting thing. So
exactly, this could go on a
plenty of
long time. At some point, I will do it. You know, if I have to do a 24-hour podcast and get you all on for a special thing, if I have to do like it's the last podcast ever, so we're getting everybody on, we'll find a way. We'll make it happen.
I think maybe if Robbie's gonna continue to refuse to be on it, maybe we make that a goal for our next fundraiser. Robbie appears on Comics and the Cross. So I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll
that's
see.
it.
Robbie got Max to watch The Princess Bride, so
hey, anything can happen after that.
Right,
you know?
anything can happen.
Robbie
sure.
in the chat is saying I'm announcing my retirement right now. Wow.
All right. Oh, okay then.
Feeling the love.
Good thing
there.
you got on this last episode this weekend, huh, Robbie? It's a good final send off.
That's it. The send off for it. Also shout out as well to Co-op Trio Podcast. Thank you so much, guys, for dropping a follow for us. We greatly appreciate it. Welcome to the Comic Clan. Glad you can be here to join us today.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of the Co-op Trio podcast. I'll have to queue up their podcast and take a listen to it. But I've been seeing them on a lot of Twitch streams and stuff. So
yeah, they've started streaming on Twitch. Honestly, I kind of followed them because I literally clicked onto their page on Twitch because it said podcast. And I'm like, ooh. Yeah, it was literally like an intrigue thing, but they seem like a really cool group of people. I've managed to pop into the streams a few times. I've still to check out the actual podcast itself. And they said, of course, for the follow, like, thank you so much, we appreciate it. So let me do a quick shout out. They do some streaming. I need to get used to doing this shout out thing. That's what happens when you get a fancy bot. You don't know.
Skeets is pretty fancy. I mean,
he is. It's like he's fancy. He's probably too fancy for me to know what I'm doing. There we go. So go ahead, click on that link, and give the follow to the Co-op Trio podcast. Great group of people. Go and give them some love. They've been playing, and I think they've been streaming. Pretty much every night this week. And they've been streaming some Fall Guys. Obviously, that's the big game right now. Also been a couple of streams of Alan Wake that I've caught, which has been pretty cool. Going about nice. Old school horror sort of psychological sort of side of things.
On my backlog with a lot of games, but that's I've heard lots of good things about it. So
yeah, so it was like, go and give them a check out, guys. I absolutely appreciate it. So yeah, let me jump into mentioning our sponsor before we go into the news for this week. Up above our co-host Isaac over there, you will see Gamergrind Co. That is our official sponsor. Let me throw up a link in the chat. Go ahead and click on that link. You can check out some Gamergrind Co. The #1 coffee for gamers. #OnThatGrind. You can definitely go ahead and check them out. They've got some amazing products. We just received our most recent one. We've purchased like a random subscription thing, my wife and I. So like we get a random like 16-ounce bag every month from them. And they just absolutely showed us love and sent us. We tried all the flavors that were their original 16-ounce. And they sent us 2 bags of 10 ounces this month.
Dude, nice.
For streamers who are or people that they support or sponsor. Which, if you heard me speaking to Lewis Southard last week, I'm 100% getting one of these when they become available to purchase again. Like Comics and the Cross is getting its own coffee. That is a thing I'm going to make happen eventually.
That sounds amazing. That would be awesome.
But we got some Rage Mode from Super Bias. I'll put a link for him in the chat. He's a Twitch streamer as well. And then for musician, Biscotti Blend from Vanilla Biscotti, who's a rapper. So we'll be looking forward to checking those out. If you want to get some of that amazing coffee for yourself, go ahead and click on the link I put in the chat and use Comics and the Cross at checkout to save 5% on purchases. And while you're there, pick up a Comics and the Cross mug and sticker, because that's exclusive in their store right now. So go ahead and do that. And be on the lookout for, once we are able to finally get it, for Comics and the Cross coffee, which Their stuff's out of stock right now, but once it's in stock, I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to get us some coffee. Got the name for it and everything is going to be happening. Co-op Trio podcast saying you guys rock. Eating breakfast though, got a lurk. No problem at all. Hang out, lurk. I do not mind lurkers. And if you're lurking as well, let us know that you're here and lurking. If you don't want to interact with the chat, if you're just sitting listening, they threw hashtag, no, exclamation mark even, lurk in the chat saying Co-op Trio podcast is currently lurking. They step back and observe quietly from the shadows. So we do not mind lurkers at all on this channel. If you want to come in and lurk, you're more than welcome to. Isaac is one of our frequent lurkers when he listens to the podcast on Sunday, so we do not mind that one bit. All right,
Absolutely.
so there's actually quite a bit of news from this week. I wasn't expecting this much news. Like last week, there was like nothing. There was like two things.
Like that. Like it's so weird because this isn't such a weird like couple months we've been going through. So like you're almost like looking for anything that you can bring up as news because movies aren't coming out. Like TV shows finally are starting to come out again, but
yeah,
man, like
it's
news
really
has been weird. So it's the same thing on our podcast. We usually have a segment called Nerd News, and like some weeks you're really like just looking for anything that you can bring up as news, and then other weeks you have so much to get through. Like it's kind of a weird. We've been actually going through a spurt where there's been like this year I feel like there's been a ton of DC news, and Marvel's kind of been like sitting back and just I think they must be like prepping for their next like phase and stuff like that. Like I think I
think that DC's also prepping right now because for anyone that's not aware, DC's doing a complete interactive con online essentially called DC Fandom, and it's going to be on the 22nd, I believe. I think it's the 22nd.
Yeah, I think it's that 22nd is the first day. There might be multiple days. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
I think there's a few days, but the 22nd is the first official day. So like less than a week. So like next Saturday is the first official kickoff for it, and there's a whole bunch of stuff they're talking about. There's going to be a whole bunch of people there for panels, talking about movies, talking about games, talking about TV, like talking about the comics themselves. There's so much lined up for that. So I feel like with that, we've been getting a lot of DC stuff kind of starting to come through the cracks. Whereas like Marvel, we've really not had much. At least not.
Yeah, the Marvel stuff we have had, it just seems like it's just rumors flying around. Like there isn't any like confirmed news actually. Whereas on the DC side, there's actually been, actually stuff happening. So interesting.
Yeah. So jumping into some DC stuff. So the major DC announcement this week is that DC, along with Warner Brothers, has basically had a mass release of staff, like to the point of like people were freaking out, and like Jim Lee, the executive at the head of DC Comics right now, had to make a statement saying yes, we're still going to be producing comic books. Like it was that much of a massive layoff that people thought that was it, DC Comics is done. Like that's how many people have been let off, like to the point of people wondered if DC was going under.
Well, there was rumors probably like over a month ago now too that DC was gonna like stop producing comics like in general, and it was like, I mean, kind of strange that you would even hear those rumors considering, they're like, I would even say as far as comics go, like DC's really the company that everybody has to live up to. Like even Marvel does an awesome job with their comics, but DC's comics are fantastic. So that's just, it's crazy that rumor is even coming up, and then with this going on, it's like, man,
those rumors always circulate, like DC and Marvel especially with how successful the movies have been, and they're pushing the TV shows and all this. Like there's been plenty of talks, like especially of Disney doing it to Marvel, like liquidating Marvel Comics, because what's the point? They've got the intellectual properties. There's no way in the world. Like if you look at Disney's like income and like Warner Brothers income, Marvel and DC's comic branches are like blips on the radar. Like they could shut those doors and they would never notice.
Yeah.
But what they care about is the intellectual property. Like Marvel making movies, that makes Disney money.
Yeah.
Selling products, selling toys, selling clothes, selling backpacks, whatever it is, like that's what makes the money. The comics don't. They just exist to kind of keep creating stuff that they can take for other things, really.
Right. Yeah, man, if that ever came down to it where, DC or Warner Brothers and Disney both were like, you know what, this is not making us financial impact for us, so we're just gonna shut it down. Like, man, that would be so devastating for comic book fans. Like, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
It'd be nuts.
And that's the thing, like, I remember hearing someone talking about it as well. Like, something they could even do is, like, sell their characters off to other, like, publishing houses. Like, IDW is already publishing, like, kid-friendly Marvel content.
Yeah, that's true. And then they could, they could just retain the movie, like, film rights and just, sell basically the publishing, like, comic book rights to
because they'd still own the characters and everything. They'd just be like canning over the publishing duties to like someone like IDW. It's like,
right.
I mean, it's possible. I don't think it's going to happen though. I think it's all rumors at the point. But I think it kind of shocked people when a company like DC, who, especially in comic book terms, it's one of the big two. Like, Marvel and DC are the two big companies, the pop culture icon superheroes, who are backed by multi-million-dollar companies.
Oh yeah, yeah.
To see mass layoffs happening in one of those companies is a scary thing.
It is, yeah. It's definitely a bummer for everybody involved, and hopefully that doesn't, make an impact on comic book production or anything else either. But it's like you were saying with the numbers involved, like, you almost have to speculate, like, there's got to be some kind of downsizing within the company that so many people are getting laid off. So yeah, hopefully that really doesn't impact a whole lot of the production from the company. But
absolutely. I mean, it's like, for it to be that mass, it's like I'm waiting for some sort of news that something's happened, like there has to have been a reason. So jumping from DC over to the Marvel stuff, rumor circulating of a possible, I don't want to say casting because it's still in talks and stuff, but someone that could be joining the MCU as one of the mutants of the X-Men. Apparently the rumor going around now is Shia LaBeouf. I don't even need to explain who he is. Everyone knows who Shia LaBeouf is. Do it
one way or another. Everybody knows who he is one way or another.
You know who he is at this point. It's like, I don't know where you know him from, but you know him. Is in talks to play Iceman in a future Marvel X-Men movie. What do you think of this possible casting? Like, of Shia LaBeouf, first of all, joining the MCU, and then the Iceman as a character they've lined him up to play?
I actually don't mind it. Like, a lot of people, he's kind of one of those actors that a lot of people either hate or absolutely love, and I'm honestly kind of like right in the middle. I really do. I think he's a good actor. He's been in a couple like stinkers, but I mean, he himself is not a terrible actor. So I think he could really shine in a like a superhero role. I know it's been almost years that a rumor's been floating around that he was in, or maybe it's just a fan casting even, but like him playing Moon Knight was a thing for a while. So right, and that would be, I think that would fit him pretty well, honestly. And just like looking at a picture of him, you'd think, yeah, he could make a pretty good Iceman too. I don't know. I think he's a good enough actor to probably handle whatever role he's thrown. But the source that I saw was We Got This Covered, which is very, like, pretty much all their articles are like rumored articles.
Yeah.
They're not like, they don't ever put any like sources or anything like that. So I would say that this is more of a rumor than anything, but still, when I heard that, I was like, oh, you know what? I'm not mad about it. I could live with that if that's the case. And if they're starting to cast X-Men, sweet. Like, I'm all for X-Men news.
Absolutely. And just shout out to the chat. Hey, old Tommy, how's it going? He's saying hi, everyone. Thank you for that host as well, brother. Absolutely appreciate it. Go and check out El Tommy as well. You can actually find him at Frozen Orange Gaming. I can't do a shout out link to it because it's over on Facebook, but he does a lot of gaming over on Facebook Gaming. So go and show him some love. Tommy's a good friend that I've made doing the streaming stuff. So go and show him some love over there.
Cool.
I need to get like a link set up to try and do that because I've got a couple of people over there as well. Yeah,
you've been active, getting to know a lot of different people on Facebook and Twitch, and I guess Mixer's not a thing anymore, so you can't get to know people on there anymore. But
Yeah, most of it was just kind of like randomly kind of adding people, like these people seem cool or go and check out these streams. A lot of it was through, we've raided them a couple of times, like Gid Kid Dad. His community does a lot of like, he's quite happy to share like shout outs and stuff and get people to put ones in chat if you're a streamer and follow. So I've been kind of connecting with him and finding people on there, so just finding a lot of new people, and then they raid people or new people get suggested cause of it, and you know, you just start finding it, just bouncing about in chats and just saying hi to people, and
yeah,
you know, so
get to know some people.
Yeah, just try to do a little bit of networking, trying to support other streamers. Obviously you can only support kind of, you know, one at a time, really. You can't that's the biggest
tough,
issue
man.
with it, is like trying to get like streamers when they're all like streaming at the same time. Like I kind of have to pick one,
for real,
because if you start trying to like lurk in too many chats, like Twitch starts to like basically identify you as a bot. So you can only like do one, maybe two if you're lucky. You can lurk and watch, you know, but that's about it. But yeah,
it definitely is a tough thing, because like, man, there's so many awesome streamers out there, and yeah, like you said, I mean, you can open a bunch of tabs, but you can only really pay attention to one at a time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely tough to spread it out and give everybody, you know, the awesome like shout outs that they really deserve, because there's so many great streamers out there for sure.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I want to do in here. Like, if anyone comes in, if you're watching the now and you're a streamer, like, you know, let us know in chat. I want to give a shout out, and especially if you're a smaller streamer, I want to try and help, you know, help these smaller communities that are people that are just love doing what they're doing and busting their butts to do something, you know.
Yeah,
can't disagree with that. But yeah, back to the Shia LaBeouf playing Iceman. Like, I'm not a massive Shia LaBeouf fan. Like, I don't absolutely hate the guy or anything like that, but I'm like, I don't get why he keeps getting all these massive roles, because he keeps dropping the ball on stuff, and it's like,
I think he's one of those actors that has like a niche. Like he acts kind of the same in a lot of his roles. I wouldn't say he's a one-dimensional actor, but he kind of does play the same role in a lot of his movies.
Yeah, like I legitimately grew up watching him like on Disney as Even Stevens, like that old show, and like literally the shows where he seems to succeed best, or the movies he succeeds best, he's basically playing the same character.
Right.
When he tries to branch out and stuff, it seems to bomb. Like even his most recent one, was it that movie where he's like the gang lord or like a drug kingpin or something, and he got like all the tattoos
he actually
and stuff.
I was gonna say I saw that he actually got legitimate like tattoos for that one, like a huge chest tattoo. So that's, I mean, commitment to the role. I never watched the movie, so I don't know how he does that, but like props.
No, it's like
on being committed for your role, I guess.
Yeah, like he done it, and then it bombed apparently. Like I've not seen it myself yet, I've not checked it out, but from the ratings that people are giving it, it's like it's bombing.
That's too bad.
Thank you for that follow, Stay at Home Gamer. Absolutely appreciate it. Massive love. Welcome to the Comic Clan. We're glad you can join us. If you're a streamer yourself, let us know in chat. We'd love to give you a shout out and send people your way. Love to support each other's. But thank you so much for that follow. I greatly appreciate it. As you can see in our little bar that we've got going on down here, we're on our road to 200 followers, and we're at 183 right now. So thank you for everyone that's shown us some love towards that and helped us get towards that goal. Alright, our next bit of news, I'm very intrigued to talk about this one, because it's kind of one of the big talking points right now, at least online, that I've seen, is regarding the live action Avatar series. And I think this news is getting more kind of traction, especially with the fact of, like, you know, Legend of Korra just dropped on Netflix following the successful dropping of like Avatar The Last Airbender, the animated series on Netflix. They've been getting massive views. Avatar was like #1 on their Netflix's charts for goodness knows how long. It brought it to forefront of people's minds. Netflix announced a little while ago they were going to be doing a live action adaptation of it, and that the creators were involved and were going to be looking to help helm it. And then we got the news this week that Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Konietzko, if I'm saying that right, I have no idea, and the creators of Avatar have left. They are no longer involved. The live action show is still going ahead, but they are no longer going to be involved in it.
Yeah, man. So my backstory with Avatar, I literally just started watching that show like a couple weeks ago.
Oh
I'd
wow.
never watched it. Like I didn't watch a lot of TV growing up. And I never just got around to watching it. So when it came on Netflix, I was like, oh, you know what? There's so many people that say this is literally like the best animated show of all time. So I should probably add this to my list. So I finally started watching it, and I'm like probably a little over halfway through the first season, and
Mm,
it's not disappointing so far. It's
no.
fantastic. So
It's
I
I would argue it's not just the best animated show I've seen, but one of the best TV shows I've seen. Like, it doesn't have a
right,
right to for a Nickelodeon rip off of an anime.
yeah,
It doesn't have a right to be as good as it is, but it's
mhm.
phenomenal.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
doubt
and
you're going to be
that's
disappointed.
so many people that I've talked to about it have like the highest praise for it. So I had to watch it, and again, it hasn't disappointed yet. So I don't have a huge like a lot to stand on for this news because I still haven't watched the entire show, but from what I've watched is fantastic, and
Yeah.
anything that the original creators are in on probably, which is why the movie was so bad from what I hear because
Oh.
they weren't involved in it.
Oh, it
I've
was
even seen just
so
like
bad.
previews and clips of the movie, and it just looks
It's
awful. So
see all the things you think of what makes a good movie. It couldn't hit one of them.
oof.
Between like mispronunciation of names. See if I see that little girl in it call him Ong one more time. It's like his name's
Oh
Ang.
man.
Ang. It's like if I
Oh,
see
it's
that, it's got
unfortunate.
terrible CGI. The acting is totally like like cardboard. It's the story is ridiculous. They miss out massive key plot points or just
Oh man.
completely ignore them. It's like, oh my goodness! It's like it's everything they could have got wrong with it. Just that made the show great. Like he just did not hit any of it, and to my feeling anyway, it's the worst adaptation I've ever seen of something.
Wow. Okay.
It's like it's when you look at what the source material is and how wrong you can get it, it's pretty bad.
Really.
Um,
And that's what I've heard. I've heard literally that it's the worst like adaptation of any media pretty much ever. So
yeah, like I mean, like
that's unfortunate.
with the creators leaving this live action show, like I feel like it's going to not quite hit the original series, but I don't think it's going to be as bad as freaking Shyamalan having a shot at it. Like
Mm, yeah.
don't know who decided he was a good director to take that on, but I don't think the show
Oof.
was going to capture it anyway. I think the original Avatar was lightning in a bottle. There was
Right.
you
Yeah.
can't recreate it. It's 3 perfect seasons. They had a story to tell, one overarching story that fits the 3 seasons, and then it was
Right.
done. And it's
Yeah.
like
Well, what do
even
you think about like what do you think about like more spin-offs happening even if they're live action because I mean Legend of Korra I've heard really good things about as well.
see,
Um
I'm kind of like with you with the first one. I'm now watching Legend of Korra for the first time. Like
oh, okay.
a few years
Gotcha.
ago, I watched season 1 of Korra, but I'd never seen the other 3 seasons of it. So like I just finished. Like I've literally been binging them while I've been here at home. So like I just finished
Gotcha.
season 2 last night.
Hmm.
It's definitely not as good as Avatar. Like I said, I think that's lightning in a bottle. I don't think you can recreate that.
Hmm.
But I like the take on it. Like it's set in a very 1920s-esque world. Like even like the retro like look back on what's happened so far is like a 1920s like newsreel thing that you would get in like the cinema telling you what's going on, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. It's like
Yeah, that's cool.
and there's a lot more industrial stage. We're hitting the industrial era, so like things are changing for it. So like this is kind of cool. Um, so I'd be intrigued to see more stuff like that. Although I will say one thing it does is like she does a lot of flashbacks to the city she's in, Republic City, which is created by Aang. She does a lot of flashbacks to like Aang as an adult there and interacting with people and some of the other cast as their adults. Part of me is like I kind of want to just see them as adults and see what adventures
Right.
they
Yeah,
go on,
like
and
and
because
and you would think that most people would probably be receptive to another animated spin-off because that's just the medium, but I mean it'll be interesting to see a live action adaptation that isn't
yeah,
awful, I guess.
I mean
So
I'd be completely up for them continuing like spin-offs. Like who's the Avatar after Korra? who's the next one to take up the mantle, who's the new world, and keep going with it, or even go back and look. There's so many avatars that came before Aang, like let's look
just
at one.
using the universe instead of having to make it into a live action with the same story or
I love it. In Korra we get in Korra season 2 you get like a great look at, she looks back in her past lives and we get to hear the story of the first Avatar and how he became Avatar. It 100% is like one of my favorite bits from the entire show of Korra, maybe even Avatar as a whole. Like seeing the first Avatar and how he came to be, I'm like, it's awesome. Like I'd love to explore the lore a bit more, like that stuff. So if they want to go back to doing that, I wouldn't mind.
Mm-hmm.
But the live action, I'll probably check it out, but I'm not excited for it.
Gotcha.
So I do have a bunch of other news. We are pushing on, so I'm going to touch just a couple of topics left in our news. One of them is Spider-Man 3, and the Tom Holland Spider-Man series, not the Tobey Maguire, emo Spider-Man. Is apparently, it's been leaked what the title of that's going to be, and apparently it's going to be Spider-Man Homesick, which is just an awful name.
Yeah, I can't say I'm a fan. Like, I do kind of like the home theme that they're going with, but I feel like there's so many other better titles that you could go with. But again, and somebody, like you said, this, I've heard from a couple different sources that this was a leak of the actual title and not just like a rumor. But I haven't heard from really I haven't heard from any really reputable sources that this is for sure, or like a graphic or anything like that. So I'm kind of hoping that this is just a rumor, just because I'm not a fan. I've been saying from the beginning that this one should be Homeward Bound, because the last one was Far From Home, like Homeward Bound, or like Home Sweet Home maybe, or something like that. I don't know, like something to do with coming home, homesick. I don't know, we'll see. Because I mean, Far From Home was it was in Europe basically. So I mean, you gotta imagine that he's back in New York at this point. Like, where else would he be?
I'm like, I don't know, like, because I don't even know where the story could go from a name like Homesick. Right. Obviously, we're going into a new world, because at the end of Far From Home, spoilers for the end credits of that, is revealed who he is. Like, his identity is revealed as Peter Parker after the whole fight with Mysterio. Mysterio sends a video to the online bugle that J. Jonah Jameson reveals to the world that it's Peter Parker. And I'm like, okay, this will be interesting to see where they go with that. And I'm like, maybe
I mean, they really,
maybe he's homesick because he's on the run, or
Right. Yeah. The thing that I liked about that was they've like touched on something that none of the other Spider-Man movies have really gone into, which is interesting, because like you said, I mean, they can take this so many different directions now. But it'll just be really interesting to see where it goes. I mean, I've heard so many people say that Kraven should be the villain in Spider-Man 3, which I would be totally up for. Like, I haven't seen a good Kraven on live screen, so that would be sweet to see. But honestly, they can really just go wherever they want with this. Like, they didn't set themselves up for a predictable third movie at all. So I mean, the world is literally at their feet right now. So I mean, I've loved the Tom Holland movie, so I'm kind of just anything that happens, I'm all for it. And it is a little bit of a bummer about the title. Like, I'd much rather see a different title, but you know what? It's probably gonna be a good movie regardless. So I guess I'll have to live with it.
I mean, it's probably going to be a good movie, and we'll probably enjoy it. I don't know. Like, even if it makes sense, I'm like, Homesick's just not a grabbing title for it.
Yeah, and the other ones, like, I mean, Homecoming and Far From Home, they have been pretty decent, like, intriguing titles.
Yeah,
Homesick just doesn't. Yeah, it just doesn't seem like it's got the same draw as the other titles do. So, yeah, I guess we'll see. Hopefully, I hope that's a rumor, but I guess we'll see.
Well, that's later. It. Anything could happen from there, so it might not happen. So the only last major thing I wanted to talk about, because the rest of these are kind of extras we don't need to go into, because we do have some other things to talk about obviously today, was this was kind of a last minute addition to like the news list. I don't even know if it's in the one I sent you. Because it's regarding Ray Fisher.
Oh, okay.
Because Ray Fisher spoke out obviously against Joss Whedon and the way he was treated on set and stuff like that. And it was a lot of big talk in that, and people were kind of like, okay, you know, Joss Whedon's kind of got a few people speaking out against him recently, so understandable. Then out of nowhere, he drops a tweet calling out Jeff Johns, you know, the former head of DC Comics, the man who is basically responsible for being the link between the comic world and the movie world and helping on set with that. And during that, he said, during the LA reshoots for Justice League, Jeff Johns summoned me to his office to belittle and admonish my agent's attempts to take grievances up the proper chain of command. He then made a thinly veiled threat to my career. This behavior cannot continue. So yeah, it basically saying that, you know, Jeff Johns kind of threatened him for the way he was behaving, for trying to deal with stuff, and basically made a threat against his career, apparently. As far as I know, Jeff Johns has not responded to this, not that I've seen anyway. And as far as I know, no one else has came out, like, whereas like other people were kind of saying stuff about Joss Whedon, and no one has came out, like none of the rest of the cast, none of the crew, no one has really came out and said anything about Jeff Johns. So do you think there's any credibility to this, or is Ray Fisher just taking shots where he can at this point?
I think it's hard for me to believe that there is zero credibility to Ray Fisher's thoughts or tweets or whatever, but at the same time, it seems odd that none of the actors, nobody else has corroborated his story. So I don't know, I feel like I'm kind of caught in the middle. Like, maybe this kind of like societal like environment that's been going on the last, you know, probably half of the year has led to him speaking out on it. And again, it's hard to say because nobody has validated his thoughts, nobody from the cast or crew or anything like that.
Yeah.
So and the thing is, like, nobody's like really speaking against him either. So it's really hard to get a read on if this is accurate or if it's just an actor that thought he was done wrong and is making a big deal out of it. And I don't want to say that because we don't know anything, but again, yeah, it's such a tough subject. I would say I'm gonna have to see more like evidence from some of the other cast or something that would get me fully believing that both of these guys were treating him so poorly, because he said a lot of stuff about how badly he's been treated. So yeah, it's a hard subject, honestly. And I don't like, again, I don't want to diminish his feelings or his experiences, but when there's nobody else, you know, speaking up or standing out, it's really hard to determine what is the truth in that situation.
No,
so
definitely. And
yeah,
I think that's the tough thing, is like that he kind of said this and then everyone went silent, and there wasn't a second or third voice like jumping in to give credence to either side.
Right. Yeah, and even the guys that he's accused haven't really
responded. Because that's the thing, like when he spoke about Joss Whedon, like people started wondering, because people have been speaking out against Whedon's behavior for a while now, and you know, his ex-wife and stuff has been very vocal about it. The one with Jeff Johns honestly caught me off guard, because like he was like Mr. DC for a long time. He's one of the guys that helmed DC and took it to some of its best heights.
Right. Yeah, that definitely took me off guard, because I mean, I don't follow Jeff Johns like a ton, other than like the comics that he's helped write, you know. Like, I mean, he's helped write some really good ones, and I thought, I mean, you know, there's always bad people in the industry that get outed, but I had no misgivings or clues as to, who he was as a person before this. So it
Well,
was
that's
just
it.
like,
There wasn't anything beforehand to kind of suggest that Jeff Johns was one of the
Right.
bad guys, was one of the horrible people in the
Yeah.
company. And then even like after Ray Fisher said what he said, that's usually when like, like you'll get it like with the Me Too movement and the standing up thing of like when someone
Right.
speaks out, like someone spoke up against Harvey Weinstein and what he did, then all of a sudden all these other people came out.
Right.
The same that's been happening in the comic industry and the streamer industry and like every industry recently. Like when someone says it gives other people the courage to stand up.
Yeah. Right.
But he came forward with Jeff Johnson, like, and no one else stood up.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
does that mean like everyone else is just staying quiet? Is it just because it's Ray Fisher that's having issues with them? Is it something that he's making up? Like, there's no other information bar this little bit we've gotten, and it's like,
yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I know that Fisher's mad about the way that Justice League was treated, and he feels he was mistreated on set and stuff a little bit. But it's like, I don't know if there's credence to it. I don't know if there's credence to either of them. There's just not been enough information. Like, we've literally got nothing else on it.
Yeah, and like you said before, like, I mean, at least in Joss Whedon's case, like, he has a history of crappy behavior, not specifically like discrimination, but like just being a douche, basically.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, you have a little bit of credence there, I guess, but
yeah,
again, I don't know, like, it's almost odd that there's so much silence among like everybody around them. Like, nobody in the Justice League cast could even like be like, I'm behind you, Ray Fisher, or like even not even discredit them, but just say that they stand behind him. Like, it seems like somebody would have seen that mistreatment if it was that egregious.
Yeah,
and been able to at least corroborate his story,
someone to have seen it, or someone experienced it as well, or someone like he spoke to someone about it on set and wasn't sure what to do, or just something. And it's like, it's just so interesting. I almost like, I think everybody else is shocked by it too, so that's why there's so much silence going on right now, because nobody really knows what to think about it at this point until somebody stands up and says something one way or the other, I guess. Yeah, pretty much. Like, until we get more information, it's just kind of like, just the fact that like that's two people now. I'm like, the only other thing in my head is that the end of it, or is there going to be more names to come?
Right.
It's like, is it? But everything at this point is hearsay. We just need to wait and see until we get some real information.
Yeah, and that, like, it's like another difficult topic, because then if you, it's kind of like the Bill Cosby effect. Like, we find out Bill Cosby is this terrible guy. I like go back and I love the Cosby Show, like one of my favorite sitcoms of all time. I watch that show now and like I feel guilty for watching that show because Bill Cosby's such a terrible guy. But the show itself, there's nothing wrong with the show. The show is amazing. If the reputations of these guys are outed and they aren't actually terrible people, man, that means like there's so much media that I would look back on, and I don't know if I would straight up boycott stuff, because again, there's nothing wrong with the Cosby Show, and I love the show, so I don't think boycotting a show is going to do anything as far as the the behavior of the individual.
Especially at this point when the show has been off the air for how long. It's like,
right, yeah, exactly.
Boycotting is not going to do anything.
Right, yeah. So yeah, you know what? If that were true, I would feel bad and maybe guilty about like watching Joss Whedon movies, maybe, or Jeff Johns media. I don't know, but I don't think that is enough to make me stop consuming the media. But I see that argument going around a lot online, is that, man, these terrible people, you can't support anything that they do or any of their stuff or anything like that, which obviously, I mean, I don't know, I guess there's something to be said for if you support their stuff or enjoy their stuff, you're technically supporting them. But I don't think there's, personally, I'm not agreeing or condoning their behavior just because I watch a movie that they directed, from 10 years ago or whatever. So,
and I think you have to make a judgment call on some of that stuff for yourself. you know, it's like, because some of them have got their hands in so many things, you know, it's like, I mean, one of the ones that really stands out to me is like putting on a movie for my kids. Like my son likes watching the Paddington Bear movie. That was made by the Harvey Weinstein Company.
Yeah.
I'm like, he loves waiting. I'm not going to make my son boycott this movie just because he's a horrible jackass. It's like, because it's a great movie, and a lot of people put a great effort into this. And the truth is, he probably had no hand in it apart from his name being on it.
Right.
Because he owns the company. It's like, you know, but like, you have to make your decision on this stuff, and you know, and you have to make a decision on this. Do we believe Ray Fisher or not? Do we believe Jeff Johns and Joss Whedon are guys who treat people like that or not? And you know, it's your call to make.
It's tough to make a decision at this point because there's just not information out there. Like, there's not enough information to make a decision one way or the other, I feel like, at this point.
Definitely. All right, so switching gears, before we jump into the Spider-Man stuff, I do want to do a little shout out. I'm going to plug our YouTube channel here. If you're not following us on YouTube, go ahead and click that link and hit that subscribe button. All our previous podcasts are archived up there, but also I just dropped a recent video there, our first YouTube exclusive video specifically, talking about an upcoming comic. If I remember to put it up in the corner, this corner here, there should be a little box appearing with a link to the interview. We actually had Dr. Baron Bell and Marc Stansel for Terminus Media on the channel talking about the upcoming comic Dominion, Fall of the House of Saul. We at Comics in the Cross, I know the Infinity Bros as well, got the privilege of getting some early content on that. We got that first issue sent out to us prior to the release. It does drop in tomorrow, actually. Tomorrow is the official release date of Dominion, Fall of the House of Saul.
Yep. It's gonna be awesome.
Let me go ahead and drop the link to that if you want to go and check it out. Let me try dropping it again if I can actually spell. There we go.
There it is.
Go and drop it. Go and check that out. The first 4 pages are available on the Terminus Media website. You can go and check those out. The first 4 pages are definitely worth reading. We are big supporters of this book. Comics in the Cross. We're going to be having Dr. Bell back on the channel if everything goes to plan on August 30th, and to talk a little bit about the book. And I'm going to be here pretty much sitting listening, because it's going to be Nitro talking to him about a lot of the art side of stuff, and that's all going to go over my head. I am not the artist in the channel. That is 100% Nitro. I'm here to just enjoy at that point, I'll be honest. But this is well worth pre-ordering. I pre-ordered the book myself. And thank you so much, shout out to Terminus Media, to Dr. Bell for sending us the early release of that to check it out and review. The YouTube video I didn't go too far into it, because I really don't want to do spoilers, especially when it's a pre-order. So I don't want us to go into any sort of stuff here that's spoiler territory. Although you kind of have an idea of where the story's going if you've read it. It's based on 1 Samuel in the Bible, the story of King Saul, the first king of Israel. But Isaac, what did you think of it? What did you think of Dominion, Fall of the House of Saul? Hey, Ryfresh, thank you so much for that follow. Welcome to the Comic Clan. We're grateful that you're here. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Hope you enjoy listening. If you're a streamer, go ahead and let us know. I want to give you a shout out in chat as well if you are. But thank you for joining the Comic Clan and helping us get closer to 200. Sorry about that, Isaac. What are your thoughts on Dominion? You've had a chance to read the first chapter, chapter 1.
Yeah. So all of us Infinity Bros also got a chance to read it, prior to release tomorrow, and I actually wrote a review on it on our website. If you go to theinfinitybros.com,
I've just dropped a link to that in the chat for you.
Perfect.
So go ahead and click on that. That'll give you access to all the Infinity Bros stuff, their podcasts, everything like that. And
so
Isaac did write something on that recently. So
we've got a blog called The Daily Snap, and I wrote a quick, 2-minute review basically. If you're looking for the TDLR on Dominion, the Fall of Saul, or the fall, is it the Fall of the House of Saul?
Fall of the House of Saul.
Yeah. Definitely go and check that out. It's just a really quick kind of summary of my thoughts on it. I thought it was fantastic, and I'm not going to go too much into detail because you can check out both Cross's review on YouTube and my review on our website. But yeah, I thought it was amazing, and one of the only negatives that I really pulled out of it was that, man, I cannot wait to read more. Like they did some
Yeah.
great world building in this one, which makes a little bit slower of a start, but down the road that's going to make for amazing comic. So I can't wait. This one drops tomorrow, and then I think chapter 2 is supposed to come out in December
Yeah,
2020.
December this year.
So yeah, I mean, I was like ready to dive deep, and it was like I was diving off a diving board, and the pool is just like so shallow, you know. So I totally smashed my face on the bottom of the pool because I wanted to get into it, but I was like, oh man, now I gotta wait. It sucks.
Yeah, like it's a really great book. It's a really great thing. The art in it, first of all, this is like created, written, and drawn by Dr. Bell. There's a bunch of other people on it. I checked them out in the YouTube video.
He did the illustrations too. That's awesome. I didn't know that.
He did the
Cool.
illustration, and like it's nuts. The artwork is so good in this.
Yeah, it's really good.
This issue definitely does what I feel like an issue should do, issue 1 should do, which is to kind of draw you in and make you want to read more. My only thing is, like, this is only going to be 3 chapters, and I'm like, there was so much world kind of building, but it was also, like you said, very slow paced into it and setting up what's to come. And I'm like, how are you going to fit this into just 2 more chapters, even at 28 pages each? And I'm like, where's this going to cut off? Like, because I know he spoke about it, and if you watch our previous interview with him, he spoke about he's planning to do more. Like, he's planning to continue Saul into doing King David and then King Solomon, which will be phenomenal. But I'm like, where does Saul end then? Like, where's the cutoff for this story? I'm like, just 3 chapters. I'm like, there's so much information in there.
There's a lot of story you can tell. It'll be interesting to see where he goes with it. But man, yeah, I thought it was amazing. So
you do get a feel for the characters as well. Like, I honestly felt I understood where Saul was coming from, and I felt sympathetic towards his place. You start to get a feel for Prince Jonathan, his son. Is definitely one you feel. We get a good introduction to the Seraphim Marines, who, like, those battle suits are just so cool. Such awesome. A great design.
Man, it was so clever. Like, everything about the allegorical component of this comic is fantastic. Like, in my review, I kind of do a little side note of like, hey, you know what? Like, I grew up in a Christian home. I've consumed a lot of Christian media, and a lot of the quality is not up to par because they sacrifice the quality just to get the Christian message, like, to be the center point of the media.
Yeah.
And nothing is sacrificed here. This is like, this is a comic that I would recommend to anybody, whether you like Christian media or not. So it's a really, really great
it's a great sci-fi fantasy story.
Yeah.
Done a great
yeah,
job
man, the way he like brings in the biblical components to a sci-fi fantasy of all things is awesome. So yeah, I definitely would recommend checking it out.
Probably my favorite scene in the whole thing, like, this isn't a spoiler because this is in the 4-page preview right at the start, I believe, is the scene with him when he's having his nightmare right at the start, and it goes back to Gilgal, and it's him talking to Samuel. Samuel is 100% my favorite character.
Yeah, same.
He is amazing.
Exactly. I wrote that in my review. Samuel is like so BA, just like
100%.
Standing up to the king, no misgivings at all. Like he's you can tell he's absolutely not afraid because he's got the Almighty like on his side, and it's just like, this guy is awesome. I love Samuel for
just
sure.
The way Bart sold and the way he calls him out on his treatment in the Amalekites, and the fact that they're not wiped out, the fact that he does all that sort of stuff, and then walking away, like Saul's of course freaking out because he's been told he's been separated from his deity, and like you see that emotion in him, the anger and the begging, the bartering for, and Samuel is just none of it. He shouts Saul down, walks down the steps, and then just electrocutes the Amalekite king.
Yes,
like, it's over.
Crazy. Like, I love that. That was probably one of my favorite parts of whole chapter 1, honestly. The crazy part, like, about this is you read the Bible, you read 1 Samuel, and the story is amazing, but you don't get a description of the character's emotions a lot of times. Like, sometimes it'll give like a Saul was angry or something like that, but you don't get the emotion behind it a lot of times when you're reading scripture straight up, or it's harder to see the emotion behind it.
Definitely.
So like the fact that you can actually like visualize the emotion in the characters' faces, body language, and you know, in their speech and stuff is like it's really cool. I
absolutely.
definitely, yeah, I don't buy like current comics just because I find it hard to keep up and expensive to keep up.
Yeah.
But I went and pre-ordered this like right when I got done reading it because it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's well worth checking out. Let me go ahead and throw it in there again. So if you're not reading the Minion, go ahead, click on that link, check out the prequel if you want. Go check out Isaac's writing on the Daily Snap about it. Go check out my video on YouTube about it as well. And I would definitely recommend pre-ordering this, and then go ahead
Jay
and
Sanchez 254. How are you doing?
Oh, hey John. Yeah, Jay Sanchez is a good friend of ours. Hey guys, how you doing? We're doing pretty well. Let me give him a shout out as well, because he's going to be starting to do some stuff over here on Twitch. Actually, he was doing stuff over on Facebook Gaming, but has jumped ship. Haha, we got another one. And so BWC Gaming 787, go and give them a follow. And just show him some love as well. Awesome guy, known John for about a year or so, so go and check his stuff out. But the social media stuff I've thrown in there, that's all the stuff for Dominion Comic, their Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Dr. Bill's YouTube page, so go and check that out. And they also have a podcast as well, talking about the behind the scenes of it, so if you enjoy like the behind the scene comic creation stuff, then that's definitely one for you all to check out. Alright, so I think it's about time to get into our main topic for today. We've been covered a lot of stuff today.
Is it time?
It is time.
Okay, alright, well I gotta take my sweatshirt off here.
Oh my goodness, he's got like all the Spider-Man gear on for today.
I'm geared up, I'm ready to go. Show my actual Amazing Spider-Man merchandise.
I was gonna say that it's like the actual like one, that big
the legit
spider one, that big logo. So we of course today are talking about the Amazing Spider-Man movies, the Andrew Garfield ones, and that little niche that was between, you know, Tobey Maguire and the MCU. When Sony said, hey, we really need to make Marvel Spider-Man movies, because if we don't, Marvel gets them back. So let's make some movies. Let's redo Spider-Man and start all over again. And these are very divisive movies, I want to say. They're very divisive.
Yes.
Like,
apparently a lot of people have opinions on them, because I've been getting in fights and I only put out like 2 or 3 tweets between yesterday and this morning already. So
yeah, it's like I've seen that in some of your posts, like you're coming on and be talking about this, and you know, rewatching them, your feelings on them, and it was like, oh dear, he's getting in fights already. He's getting fights.
I know, it's bad. Like I was trying to hold back because obviously I didn't want to like give my whole like thoughts on Twitter right before the podcast where we give our thoughts on it. So
yeah,
so I was like trying to hold back, but everybody kept just firing at me.
I love the fact the big argument seemed to be like the feeling of like Amazing Spider-Man 2 being the worst Spider-Man movie, because there's a whole host of people going, no it's not, it's Spider-Man 3.
Right,
like,
yeah.
This isn't the thing to fight over. Let's accept that they both suck.
Well, yes, that's true. But
they are both bad movies. Is like, if you prefer one to the other, all on you.
We'll definitely talk about that later when we talk about Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, when we get to the second one, yeah, there's stuff to talk about. I've got a feeling most of this conversation is going to be around the second one. That's the big one. But we're going to start off right from the get-go. Amazing Spider-Man. So you rewatched it for today's talk. Initial thoughts on it, having just rewatched it, and what did you expect going in? Like, what was your memories of it going into watching it again, and how did it stand up to that?
So going into it, I'm obviously like Spider-Man's my favorite superhero. Like, and we've talked about that. If you guys listening have been, you know, paying attention to our podcast at all, you guys definitely know that. And I think the last time I was on, we talked about it a little bit too. But yeah, Spider-Man's always been my favorite superhero. I love all the Spider-Man movies, including Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. But these are these kind of just have been at the bottom, like in terms of quality Spider-Man movies for my personal preference. And going into them, I was thinking I do remember Amazing Spider-Man being decent with a couple major flaws, and then I thought Amazing Spider-Man 2 was by far the worst Spider-Man movie. Like there was no question in my mind about it going into it. And rewatching Amazing, we'll get to the second one later, but rewatching Amazing Spider-Man, I was actually like slightly disappointed in my rewatch. I was like expecting it to be a little bit better than I realized it was. And it's been a long time since I've watched both of these. I think I maybe watched Amazing Spider-Man 5 or 6 years ago, and then
Yeah.
I think I've only watched Amazing Spider-Man 2 once since it came out in theaters in 2014.
Yeah.
So it's been a while.
Yeah.
So I
don't
went
remember
into
the
it
last time I
thinking,
watched them before this. I really don't.
right, yeah. I mean, it's been so long, and I can't. It was on my list anyways. Honestly, like if you guys hadn't have asked me to be on this podcast, I would have watched them probably this year anyways, because I got both of them for Christmas last year. Actually, I asked for the original Spider-Man, Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, and got the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 instead for Christmas. So
Wow.
I know I opened up and I was like, thank you, this is great.
That's the equivalent of a kid getting some coal in their stocking instead of a toy, you know what I mean? It's like,
Right, yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, like, again, those were also on my list too, so I guess I shouldn't have been surprised that I got them, but I was like, I kind of would rather have the original, Raimi Spider-Man movies on Blu-ray and digital and all that stuff. So I was just a little disappointed. But anyways, they were on my list of things to watch. And man, I remember Amazing Spider-Man being a solid, if not disjointed, first like origin movie, I guess. Like Spider-Man, the original Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi Spider-Man is actually my second favorite Spider-Man movie of all time. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is number one by far.
yeah.
But live action, the very first Spider-Man is my favorite, just because the like nostalgia memories of the origin of Spider-Man it brings back. Honestly, I think that one still holds up.
Oh yeah.
And this one, I thought it was gonna hold up, but I think it does as a standalone movie, but it didn't hold up as well as I thought it would. Let's just say that. So yeah, man, I was almost slightly disappointed, which I didn't think was even possible with watching movies. But
no, I do have to say, like the Amazing Spider-Man, the first one, like there's definitely nostalgia goggles there for it.
yeah,
but like
definitely.
it's going back and actually looking at it and critiquing it, it's like you start to realize this doesn't really hold up as well as you think. Like, because you think like, oh, they did a good job with it, it was okay, and then like you drop the ball on Amazing Spider-Man 2, and but the first one of this, I'm like, it's still in the same part of it. Like I just think there's just so disjointedness in it. I think they were trying to set up so much stuff, even because people like accuse the second one of that. Oh, it was trying to set up too much stuff. Like it was trying to set too much stuff up in itself.
Right.
And this one, like that, it just wasn't needed. And then they go ahead and they kind of like, there's certain things you just don't do that you think, no, that should probably be a thing. It's like, and definitely. We'll get into that as we start going through it. But like overall, I'm like, yeah, it's very. Don't get me wrong. Like, there's definite moments in this that I love. There's definite moments that I think are really good and that are spot on.
It was like the quintessential, like, go back and watch this childhood movie or thing that you have great memories of, and it just wasn't as good as I remembered it being. So either way, again, like I said, I was gonna watch it either way, but it's a bummer that it just so happened to be for this podcast, so I was actually taking notes and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I always find that when you start critiquing movies, like to review in the podcast and stuff, like I've done that before, and like you start to analyze things, you start to like, wait a minute, that's not quite as good as you. as I originally thought it was. Like, you can't just get lost in the nostalgia. You have to admit when something's flawed. It's
Yeah, right. And generally, I do not take notes for movies, even if I'm going in the theater for the second or third time. I just want to go there, enjoy the movie, like, not think. I don't like thinking when I'm watching movies, unless it's like a movie that's designed to make you think. Like, I don't want to have to, like, I'm not a movie critic at heart. I don't want to have to dissect every bit of the movie. I can still enjoy a movie even though it's not a good movie. So yeah, the note taking for me was new, but because I'm a Spider-Man fan and I hadn't done a rewatch for a long time, I was like, you know what, I should take some notes and just be ultra prepared to rip this movie apart today. So
absolutely. So let's delve into this thing, because this is, if you go back and watch our last episode, we did talk about the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, and this one is very different. Just in terms of the story to it, the tone of it, the way everything is kind of set up is very different. Let's start off with, we've got Andrew Garfield taking up the mantle of Peter Parker, Spider-Man, in this movie. I like him as Spider-Man. Like, the scene I always think about is the scene when he's in the back of like the Crook's car, and like he ends up webbing him to the wall and stuff like that. Like,
yeah.
I love that Spider-Man. He's very quippy, very, fast thought, very fast mouthed. Just simple little things like that. I'm like, okay, we're starting to get a lot of Spider-Man coming through in it that we didn't necessarily get before. I will say this though, he is not Peter Parker.
Yep.
He tries to come across like he's the geeky, overshadowed, overlooked kid, and I'm like, you are one of the trendiest, good-looking guys in this freaking school. Like, heck, are you like the where Peter Parker should be? And it's like, no.
Yeah, and that's like the whole overarching why these two movies are not close to being better than any other Spider-Man movies to me, is that I actually don't mind Andrew Garfield for this role. Like, he's a good actor, and I just think the writing was bad, and they made a different character for Peter. They honestly, this whole like Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, they're trying to be edgy, honestly, is what they're trying to do. And they made him this way too cool for school Peter Parker, that like Peter Parker in the comics, and honestly, this is why I like the Raimi trilogy so well. It's because he's this nerdy guy who has a hard time, like, socially interacting with people. He's wrapped up in his own thoughts. And this one just made it seem like he didn't care. It wasn't that he's wrapped up in his own thoughts, is that he didn't care about anything else. And I don't know, it just came off like different and wrong. And this is why, in general, these movies are worse, I think. But you're right, the quippiness of his Spider-Man is like, he makes a better Spider-Man than Toby, and even Tom, I think, too. Like, he does a really good job, especially in Amazing Spider-Man 2. His quips are on point in 2. But the first one too, like, he's great as Spider-Man.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great stuff in that, and I think that's the thing people forget, especially like with the new ones with Tom Holland. Again, it's a kind of different version, that the Spider-Man is almost quippy to a fault. Like, he does this sort of stuff, like this high energy stuff. It's like Spider-Man's a different persona almost when he puts that mask on. Like, one of the comics that always stands out to me for that is it Dark? It's not Dark Reign, but it's one of the ones that's kind of meant to be like a Dark Knight for Spider-Man, and it's like when he's older and stuff, and he ends up putting the mask back on, and he cannot help but go into that character. Even before he puts the mask on, he hates the thought of it. And that comic made me completely differently think about how Spider-Man does that stuff. Because
he's like, he does have some quips as Peter Parker, but like, they are few and far between. They're definitely more spaced out, because when he's Spider-Man, he's got something to say about everything that you say or do. He's gonna quip at you no matter what is going on. Absolutely. So I think he honestly nailed that as Spider-Man. And I think, just talking in general about Amazing Spider-Man, the casting in this movie is good.
Yeah.
Which is why it's such a travesty that it didn't become a good movie. Like the writing,
there's such great casting in this.
Yeah, the cast is fantastic. I think if they remade this specific movie, I don't even think I would change any of the casting. The casting is great. But yeah, that's why I was almost disappointed, because there's so many good things about this movie that they kind of just wasted by having terrible writing and a terrible script, and it's just unfortunate. And that's the disappointing. It's like the nostalgia factor. You're looking back on it and you think it's good, and then, man, it just wasn't, unfortunately. And again, I had still enjoyed it. I will watch it again. It's not like I'll never watch this movie again because it was terrible kind of thing.
No, it's a decent movie. Definitely.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and as a movie itself, it stands up. But yeah, it's just disappointing. The casting is so good.
Yeah. So before we get into the rest of the cast, then, as we're still talking about Spider-Man himself, what are your thoughts on the costume in this one?
I like the costume a lot, actually. It's way different than any other iteration or version of the Spider-Man costume, but I kind of like that they took it a different direction, because they're trying to separate themselves from, the Raimi trilogy and honestly just mainstream Spider-Man culture in general.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing that they nailed the look of it, because if they didn't nail the look of it, it could have been even worse of a movie. Because again, they do a little bit different coloring scheme with, a little bit more like red and blue kind of all over the costume, and the really dark, almost black lenses. I thought it was cool, honestly. I wouldn't say it's my favorite suit of all time, but I didn't mind it at all. What did you think of it?
Honestly, I wasn't a massive fan of the suit in this one. I like the change in the color scheme a little bit. Like, they kind of changed the red and blue in areas. I think that was an interesting change. Don't have a massive problem with that. Felt like the suit was very dark though. Like you said, they were kind of going for that edgy sort of tone. I felt like they made it too dark.
What would have been interesting is if they would have swapped the suits in Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Amazing Spider-Man, because Amazing Spider-Man 2's suit is really cool too, and that's kind of the more classic color scheme. And the thing I love about the second suit is it has the big lenses, not quite the Raimi suit has a little bit more narrow and kind of almost a menacing look to them, but this one, even though they don't move, they're more expressive because they're larger. So I really like that, and that would have been nice for an origin Spider-Man costume,
that
and
would have been good.
See them
I think
move into a different costume. But
I think saying what you said, they were definitely trying to separate themselves, but I feel in the second suit they nailed it. That suit was it was different, but it was still spot on. It looked more like Spider-Man. The suit in the first movie was very edgy looking, and I freaking hate those lenses. The lenses in it, because they're reflective lenses, they're mirrors, they're these dark, dingy color, and it's and the whole point is they reflect everything he's seeing, and I'm I don't know who approved that, but it doesn't.
Right.
It just looks so weird.
I have a little bit mixed thoughts on that, because I think they look cool because they remind me of Superior Spider-Man, his suit.
Okay.
He's got the black and red suit, and he's got black lenses, just a darker take on the typical Spider-Man suit, and that's what reminded me of it, but it didn't really match the rest of the suit. So I get what you're saying. It
didn't
just
match
was
the rest of it, and that's the thing though. It suited his costume though. When you look back at something like Superior Spider-Man, where it's not Peter Parker, it's Doc Ock that's in the body. So he has the darker suit, he has the dark lenses,
right.
He has
and that totally makes sense
why
it's darker.
It just didn't fit for Peter for me.
Yeah, and it was the only thing again too was his suit was kind of like reflective. So when you looked at his face, you couldn't even really make out the lenses until you'd been looking at it for a couple seconds.
Yeah.
Because the suit was reflective and it just kind of like blended in to his face for a little bit. So that was, whereas, you know, the second suit has got the white lenses and it's like sharp contrast, which looks fantastic. So yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from with that. Just, I don't know, it was interesting the way they did that suit, but I kind of like the route that they took it.
Definitely.
Generally.
Yeah. And so jumping into casting, we were talking, we're quite impressed with the casting. So let's talk mostly about the supporting cast. We'll go into like the villain and stuff and the setup of Oscorp and all that in a little bit. But like supporting cast, so Gwen Stacy, Uncle Ben, Aunt May, you know, what do we think of the cast and the story around that, like the initial origin itself? And personally, I'm a fan of Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy. I thought she did a really good job. I thought she plays the character really well, and we get to see a good progression of her character through the first into the second movie.
Right. Yeah, I think she nails it as Gwen Stacy, and I think a lot of people say like Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone have like fantastic chemistry, which you don't really get in this first one. They kind of more develop that chemistry in the second movie.
That's because they were dating by the second movie.
Yeah, right, exactly. But like she does a fantastic job in both of them. Like she's like a perfect Gwen Stacy, I think.
Yeah, she was a great choice. I think it fits perfectly. She was phenomenal choice for it. Like I would 100% cast her again as a Gwen Stacy role.
Yeah, definitely. I would
and
too.
She played a great role as it as well. Like Gwen Stacy was a great addition to the cast. I'm glad they went Gwen Stacy instead of Mary Jane.
Same, yeah.
Just as a way to differentiate again from the Sam Raimi stuff, you know, it's like to move it in a different direction, you know, because that's always the big debate: who is the love of Peter's life? Is it Gwen Stacy or Mary Jane? So I'm glad she got some airtime to appear in at least one of the trilogies, you know.
I do appreciate that they kind of stuck to the comic book general storyline a little bit better than the Raimi trilogy did, just with like Gwen, you know, being like high school sweethearts instead of MJ. So I appreciate that, and they, you know, they did some different things too, which we'll get into later, but generally they did a pretty decent job at kind of sticking to the general Spider-Man storyline, whereas they kind of took some creative freedoms, shall we say, in the Raimi trilogy.
Yeah. Well, you know, again, that's it. It's like it's one of those things to go back to the comic book route for it a little bit, but they also still make it their own, and I think it was done really well. And the relationship between them is very enjoyable to watch. Like you definitely buy them as a couple, and their interactions. Onto his parental figures, or even onto his parents as well, because we get a glimpse of Peter's parents, and we'll dive into that in the second one. Boy, will I dive into that in the second one. He just gets left with his Aunt May and Uncle Ben, and we don't really know anything about what happens with the parents at that point. But don't worry, they tell us in the second movie in case you're in suspense. So we get left with Aunt May and Uncle Ben. Sally Field's phenomenal Aunt May. I thought she was a great choice to play Aunt May. It was definitely a good different take than the Sam Raimi trilogy, making her that little bit younger, that little bit different, you know. I think she's a great person to kind of like interaction, like the relationship between her and Peter is really good to watch as well. Like, you definitely get that loving family connection between them.
Yeah, definitely. I think they did a really good job casting both Aunt May and Uncle Ben. I honestly, the Uncle Ben that is in the Raimi trilogies, his name is escaping me right now, the actor, but I really liked him as Uncle Ben. But I mean, Martin Sheen, like, he's fantastic too. So
Martin Sheen just makes it his own, and I like that Martin Sheen's allowed to have Uncle Ben for a little bit. Like, he's not like dead within the first like 10 minutes.
Yeah,
like we actually get to feel a little bit about it, and we get to feel that connection,
that relationship a little bit.
Yeah, it's like I do like him. he can be seen as that sort of great Uncle Ben type actor.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm definitely a fan of him portraying it. I feel like they did drop the ball a little bit with his story though. First of all, just say the freaking line. With
They
great
definitely danced
power
around that as
comes
much as
great
they could.
responsibility. You had a book written in the paragraph that had him trying to explain that. Like, just say, like, we're trying not to just re-say the line. Like, it's Spider-Man's line. Just say it.
Yeah, and I think I get why they didn't too, just because they hammered it to death in the Raimi trilogy.
I get
and,
it, but you could still have said it and then just move on.
Just say it, right? Yeah, exactly. Say it once, move on. You don't have to make it the focus of your whole movie. Just like have them say it once. That's it. Like that's all.
Just
that's
have
all
them say it because it's that thing that always comes back to Spider-Man. That's the line. That's why it's a pop culturally known line.
Exactly.
Because
I have this ongoing argument with the Infinity Bros. One big problem I have with MCU Spider-Man is that Uncle Ben is non-existent, and Uncle Ben is quintessential to the character of Peter Parker.
100%.
So I just can't get over that the MCU has basically replaced Uncle Ben with Iron Man. That's just not okay to me.
I get why they try to do that, but I'm like, it's
and I think they could probably. And I get why they did that too, because we've already had 2 origin stories of Uncle Ben dying. Like, I don't need a whole.
Just do it as a flashback. Just do some little flashback thing of it.
But honestly, like I could even do without that, as long as he is referencing Uncle Ben and telling us why he's doing what he's doing is because he feels that guilt. Like that's all I need from Peter Parker. I don't even need a flashback or anything, honestly. But like, man, they just like. They keep telling me, the Infinity Bros, that he exists because you see his initials on the briefcase and like the 2 other minute references that they make to him. I'm like, I know he exists, but he's not important to Peter.
This isn't like Batman and Superman in the CW shows. You're allowed to mention Uncle Ben's name. It's like
it's not going to trigger PTSD for him, or maybe
it's like
it will.
you can say something, and it's like you can mention it, and like,
and I think
even have Aunt May say it.
Right? Yeah.
Aunt May doesn't talk to him about Uncle Ben at any point.
Yep, and she's like totally fine too. Like, there's absolutely nothing wrong in Aunt May's life. Like,
she's just getting on with things, and I'm like, I'm glad you got over your dead husband.
Yeah, exactly. Just dating Tony Stark and Happy on the side, like.
Yeah, we're just going to move on from. No more. Even if a conversation with Happy.
Yeah.
They're like, oh yeah, by the way, I used to be married.
Or Mysterio. See, I mentioned this in one of the previous Infinity Bros episodes. He has this serious conversation with Mysterio about death, and that would have been the perfect opportunity for him to be like, oh, you know why I feel these things? Because my Uncle Ben died and I feel guilty about it. Like, that was all I needed. That like one sentence at the end of that conversation.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
So it's an ongoing argument. I'm the Uncle Ben advocate in the Infinity Bros. So.
Although, speaking of Uncle Ben and the guilt he feels and all that sort of stuff, let me mention one of the big issues with the Amazing Spider-Man movie.
Yeah.
Uncle Ben dies. It's not based around the wrestling thing or any of that. They do a different thing where like he's at a store and he gets screwed over by the guy at the desk, and the guy robs the store, and Peter goes whatever, walks out, and the guy runs out in the street and shoots Uncle Ben in the street. It feels very cobbled together, don't get me wrong. That's not my problem. My problem is that you see Peter really upset and holding his Uncle Ben when he dies. That's it.
Exactly.
No guilt, no remorse, no carrying the weight of that. He doesn't even go after his Uncle Ben's killer.
Well, he does. He tries, anyways.
I know, but it's like 2 movies, and it's basically like brushed under the rug, though.
For a good like 5 or 10 minutes after the fact, and then it's forgotten.
Then it's forgotten, and he goes into it, and then in the second movie, so many other storylines come in. No, we can't have the Uncle Ben storyline. I'm like, Like, do you even care?
Yeah, I
There is no guilt.
totally agree with you. Like, and the weird thing is, at the end of Amazing Spider-Man, he actually references guilt, but it's not in relation to Uncle Ben. It's in relation to he helped create the lizard,
Yeah.
and he's guilty about creating him, so he has to stop him. And it's like, so you're guilty about that, but you're not guilty.
It's set up for you. It's like, I have to do the right thing and I have to stop the lizard. Why? Because last time I didn't do the right thing, my Uncle Ben was killed.
Mm-hmm.
That is literally Spider-Man's driving force.
Yes.
Literally.
And you don't have to have a 10-minute scene. Make it a sentence. Literally.
That's
like
it. I would have
5
been fine with you not going after the killer if you just mentioned that. Like, that's why I have to go face the lizard, because last time I didn't do the right thing when I had the power to. Someone I love died. My Uncle Ben died, so I have to do this. He's threatening the city, and I have the power to stop him. I'm the only person that
For
can
every suicide,
that can literally stop
135
him.
people are personally
Whoa.
affected.
Right.
Family, friend.
What's up?
Hi there. Sorry, small commercial there.
Oh.
Apparently my finger hit like the skip button, and my Spotify was still open from the opening song, so we started getting a suicide prevention advertisement. So
I knew I liked you, Cross, and we will have to have you on our podcast so you can have my back when we talk about the third Spider-Man movie, because I know
absolutely
this is going to come up again. So me and Zane are both pretty big Spider-Man fans, and I would say Jared is also semi on our side with the Uncle Ben thing. But other than that, I think when we talked about Far From Home, I was on the podcast with Marc and Max.
of course.
I don't think, right? Yeah, I mean, it has to be those guys, right? I don't think Robbie was on it, as far as I can remember. But like, those guys were ganging up on me, and I was like, "What is going on?" Right? Oh yeah. Oh, Hollywood Bones, Patrick. Yeah, you just wait, man. You just wait. But they like legit ganged up on me, and I was like, I had no backup. It was just me trying to defend myself, and I will say, I think I did a pretty good job at defending Uncle Ben's honor in that podcast, but you'll have to, I think it's like episode 12. You guys will have to listen to
I'm
that.
gonna go back and check that one. I don't think I've seen that one.
Yeah. But
because like
anyways,
I would say that
you'll have
Uncle
to be on the podcast with me next time, so you can help me defend
because Uncle
Spider-Man.
Uncle Ben's integral to who Spider-Man is.
Exactly.
That's
like you don't have Spider-Man without Uncle Ben.
That's like Batman, like parents not getting killed.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's literally, without his parents dying in that alleyway, Batman does not exist.
Mm-hmm.
And we even see that in the comics. We see other universes. We've seen that recently when Booster Gold tried to save them and stuff. That like, if they don't die, Batman does not exist. Like, Bruce Wayne goes in a totally different direction. It's the same thing like with Uncle Ben. Like, if Uncle Ben is not killed, if Uncle Ben isn't taken from him like that, and he doesn't carry the guilt of that, he isn't Spider-Man. That's his driving force, that he needs to do the right thing, because he has the ability to. Great power comes great responsibility.
I think I'm like totally on the same page with you. Like, the whole Uncle Ben scene is rushed, but that's not the problem. Like, it's okay. They did a different take on it. They didn't want to do the whole 25-minute sequence like they did in the first Raimi Spider-Man, but it just is insignificant for the rest of the Amazing Spider-Man movies.
Do something.
So,
do anything with it. You literally like did it and then stopped, and I'm like, no, keep it going somehow.
I'm
all right,
with you on that.
All right, let's keep pushing forward, because we've not finished the first movie, and we literally have a second movie to go through. This always happens. It doesn't matter. Like, we're gonna have to literally start reviewing one movie at a time in this podcast,
for real.
Legitimately.
Although I will say though, I have less notes on Amazing Spider-Man 2, just because I was expecting it to be bad. I think so.
Yeah, it's Amazing Spider-Man 2 is kind of like, you know what you've got. You know what happened. You've all seen it. So let's talk about the villain. Dr. Kurt Connors, the Lizard. I like the setup for him. I like the fact that Oscorp is like this amazing, like, big organization at the forefront, and he's one of the scientists working for it. I like that we're going that direction. It's something a little bit different, something intriguing, because they're very much trying to focus on Oscorp as like the big bad for this series of movies. So they're doing all these different experiments, all these different things. Peter like sneaks in as you do, to go and look around Oscorp, and it just so
To the
happened.
major corporation that has very little security, just sneaks into a super secret lab that nobody else can get into.
Yeah, and he gets into the lab, and it's like it just so happens. Oh, look, the girl that's going to be his girlfriend works here, because of course she does. Of course she works
why
with
not?
Kurt Connors, because
Of course.
he sneaks
Very
in. That's
coincidental.
where he ends up getting bitten by the spider. It turns out Kurt Connors was actually working with Peter's father, and because he was a scientist working at Oscorp as well, and he's obviously working on the formula that will eventually become the serum that turns him into the lizard to try and regrow his arm that is missing. Yeah, it's like I like the setup for this. I like the setup with Kurt Connors being at Oscorp. It's something different, it's something new, but it doesn't take away from it. It actually helps in this world. That makes sense, the setup for it.
Right. Yeah, honestly, I thought they did a really great job with Oscorp in the first one, and even the second one to an extent. Side note that I wrote, the Oscorp, like the building itself, looks exactly like the Oscorp building in Spider-Man PS4, which is really cool. Like
Yeah,
no clue, because again, I haven't seen this movie for a long time, but I just noticed that and I was like, oh, that's pretty sweet. They like kind of took the basic design of the Oscorp building from this series to be in the Amazing Spider-Man. So I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, I thought the setup was good, and honestly, the only thing I remember before rewatching Amazing Spider-Man was that they did a crappy job with his face. I didn't mind anything else about the
Yeah.
lizard, but his face,
Oh.
like, why? Okay, he's a lizard. Why did you make him with a human face? Like, it's
Why is his
just
face
dumb.
flat? He looks like one
Yeah.
of the Goombas from Super Mario movie.
He looks like they tried to make him a human face on a lizard, and it's like, dude, just make him a lizard.
I want a snout. Like, where's his?
Right, exactly.
Oh, Nitro's popped up in the chat.
Nitro.
Amazing Spider-Man 2 is hot garbage, and he's like, it's like, oh, ASM 1 is as well. It's like, yeah, I think that's the thing. Nitro always thought like Amazing Spider-Man 1 was decent and passable, and it's like, no,
Right.
it's really
Yeah,
not.
and that was my thought coming into it, but unfortunately my rewatch proved me wrong, I think. But again, yeah, so Lizard backstory, Lizard's probably my favorite Spider-Man villain, and that I think that comes from the Spider-Man animated series. Like they had a really good two-part like episodes, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Two-part episode on the Lizard, and just his backstory, like even going back and reading the original comic book run, he's got an amazing story, and they kind of scrapped it for this movie. Like they were like, you know what, he doesn't need a family, he doesn't need any of this stuff, he just needs to turn into a big lizard. That's all he needs to do.
Yeah.
But the actor that plays him is great.
Rhys Ifans is amazing. He's a
Yeah,
phenomenal
he does a
actor.
great job. But man, he has no driving force besides regrowing his arm. Like he doesn't have a family to care about. He doesn't have really anything
No.
besides regrowing his arm. And I think that was a missed opportunity, because I think Lizard is one of the more complex Spider-Man villains,
Mhm.
because he's a good guy. He just turns into a lizard that is not a good guy, and Spider-Man has to stop him, turn him back into Kurt Connors so he can.
Yeah, they keep it very simplistic. I feel like they keep it like,
Right.
like almost like Connors as a bad guy. Like he starts to like has his moral fiber like
Yeah,
eroded
and
away, and he becomes a bad guy. And I'm like, Connors never was. Like he never planned this. And then
Right,
once he turned
yeah.
into the lizard, he was stuck.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and it's like, and it wasn't until he was freed from that. And it's like, and with
Yep.
Connors himself though, it was like, it feels very like he's not an in-depth villain.
Mhm.
Like he should
Yeah.
have been. Like I love the fact they went with the lizard. He's a great
Same, yeah.
villain, but they could have done so
Yeah,
much
they
more
just
with it.
definitely simplified him way more than he needed to be. And again, I didn't mind basically the rest of his CG like body it would have been cool to see him in a big old lab coat, because that's always one of my favorite parts from the comics, when Lizard is in the lab coat.
Yeah, because it's kind of like the Hulk. Like he turns into it while he's in his normal clothes. So whatever's left, he's in. You know, so
yeah, that would have been cool to see. And they kind of do one little scene where he comes into I think it's when he comes into the high school and he's still got his lab coat on and he rips it off.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I just think there was some missed. Again, this is kind of the running theme of this movie: great concepts, bad execution. Like they had a good villain and they just didn't do it justice, and that's really unfortunate, because I really like the Lizard. It's great actor, just not good execution. And the face is the travesty of the whole thing.
The face
I despise the face, and I think that was part of the disappointing. And I knew that, going into it, I knew his face was hot garbage, but it's just watching it again is just really, really unfortunate.
Looking at the chat as well, Hollywood Bones saying his face, LOL. Nitro agreeing the Lizard face is awful. He totally does look like one of the Goombas. Nitro saying, yeah, it's pretty bad. And then Nitro saying yes and amen to the Spider-Man cartoon, Dr. Connors. Great version of him.
Like, in the comics, like, Spider-Man and Dr. Connors have this amazing relationship. And, like, even with his family, like his kid and his wife, he's got a good relationship with them. And he works with his family to get Lizard back to his human form so he can be with them again.
Absolutely,
and Lizard himself, the villain, doesn't even know that he is Kirk Connors. I think that's another part of it that they kind of miss the ball on. Like the Lizard that they have is this, like, he knows he's Kirk Connors, he knows what he's doing. The Lizard in other media, he doesn't know what the heck he's doing. He is a lizard. He just wants everybody to be a lizard. Which is kind of the weird, funny part. But
speaking of everyone being a lizard as well, I feel like they try to rush that in at the end as well. Like his whole big thing was like, because they had him turn into the lizard, and then out of nowhere, like right at the finale, was like, oh, I'm going to turn everyone else into a lizard. And I'm you have not mentioned this once. Like you've just you've done the original lizard story, went, oh, he tries to turn people into lizards here, let's add that in. But it's like at the very end of the movie, so like they get turned into lizards for like 5 minutes, and then it gets reversed, and it's like, you really threw that in for no reason.
It's really funny. He like has this grand plan, and it's like boom, done in like 2 seconds when they bring up the antidote. It's like, oh, okay,
really? Were you really planning to do it for? Was that really the plan all along? Because it feels like you just kind of came up with it on the spot. I'll be honest with you.
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much. He has all those experiments in his lab, which, like, okay, one thing that got me was he's doing this experiment, and then he turns himself into the lizard. Like, he in the comics, he gets turned into the lizard. He gets triggered. Accidental. Right, like he is unaware of what is going on. He knows, like, Kirk Connors knows kind of some of his triggers to become the lizard, but in this one, he literally turns himself into the lizard, is conscious as the lizard, knows what he's doing, and that part of it just was like, okay, you're conscious as a lizard, and your big plan is to just turn everybody into lizards. Like, that's not a big good plan. Like, if you're a lizard and you don't know what you're doing, then yes, maybe that's a good plan. But if you're a human and your end goal is to turn everybody into lizards, it doesn't make sense. So that was just kind of a weird shoehorned ending, which, again, man, like, I didn't remember, and going back to it, I'm like, that's too bad that it was
it was just kind of wasted. And there's just a couple of moments, like, and two last little moments I do want to mention is, first of all, obviously, we have one of the greatest Stan Lee cameos ever in this movie. Like, so that good fight scene in the library when he's like just sorting books with his music on and has no idea.
If I did a top 5 Stan Lee cameos, I think that probably is my number one. Like, it's
very possibly my number one, because it's so well done. It's like, even like the two of them fighting the table, like almost hitting them and catching it and having to pull it away, and he's just got no clue this is going on behind him. It was just so well done. I mean, I can't think of another cameo that comes even close to that. Like, the only one I can think of that would have came close is the original one that James Gunn had planned for Guardians of the Galaxy.
Which one is that?
Which was like, 'cause you know in Guardians of the Galaxy he's just on the promenade chatting up some like young woman. And the original one was he was actually meant to be in the collector's menagerie of stuff.
Oh yeah.
He was meant to be in one of the cases, and like, and Groot
That would've
stops
been
and looks at him, and he looks at Groot and like gives him the finger.
Tony Stank. Oh, there you go. That's it. Is that? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
Endgame, or is that? No, I think that's Infinity War. The Tony Stank.
Oh no, that's Civil War.
Is it Civil War?
Yeah,
Oh,
because
man,
remember
right.
it's when everyone separates and
Yep. Yeah, because that's
Tony's
at the end
helping
when Rhodey is trying to.
Yeah, when Rhodey's trying to walk. I'm like, yeah, that's probably
That's
my
a good
favorite.
one.
One of my favorites has to be Age of Ultron, because he's at the party as like an old like war veteran, and he drinks like the Asgardian like whiskey or whatever.
Like challenges Thor to a drinking match or whatever.
Because like Thor drinks it and then he gives it to Cap, who can handle it obviously, and he's like that. Yeah. It's like, look, I've been through all these wars, I can handle it, and he gives it, and then it's like him getting carried out.
Oh, that's great. That's a good man. Stan Lee's a national treasure, dude.
He was, man. He's Stan Lee, man. Treasure. And the only other thing I want to mention in this as well, because going into the finale of it, like he has his Spider-Man has his first scuffle with the Lizard downtown. He gets the crap beat out of him, and he goes to stop him at Oscorp. And the web swinging scene downtown, straight towards Oscorp, and it's like, because every crane in New York City are within that 3-block radius of each other.
Of course.
Where they can all spin and have them all like lined up down the street right towards to Oscorp where they need to go.
I will grant you the convenience factor is very, very high in that part. But
in that moment,
it is pretty epic when he is like injured, like webs up his injury, and he's like got the determination.
Oh, that is
like,
cool.
Yeah.
That's absolutely cool. It's like all these cranes line up.
Every crane is right there.
And not to mention that it's a complete straight road straight to the building he's heading towards. And it's like, I do have to think though, like he's got that straight road to that building. I'm like, if you've got that straight road to that building, the cranes aren't really needed as badly. Like, I get it gives you something to swing on with one hand that you don't have to worry about, like grabbing a building that's off to the side. But
he doesn't have to work as hard. He gets to conserve his energy for the Lizard.
But it was like that. That was the moment of this movie I absolutely cringed when that kind of happened. I was like, oh my goodness.
You know, that kind of speaks to one big problem that I have in this movie is that Andrew Garfield, Peter Parker, is so reliant on other people. Yeah. And that's against the character of Spider-Man to me. Like, Spider-Man is a loner. He does everything himself, and the only reason he goes to other people is because he has no other choice. And he's like out there tearing off his mask, like showing everybody who he is. Like, it's just they didn't do the character of Spider-Man justice in both of these movies.
No.
I actually think it gets slightly better in Spider-Man 2, but Peter Parker is like super jumpy and like freaking out like he's on drugs or something the whole movie. That's one thing that I just didn't understand. I was like,
yeah, no, I would agree with that.
Did the writers make you do this, Andrew Garfield? Because I know you're a better actor than this. Like, he's like itching his neck all the time and like kind of making jumpy movements and stuff. It's like,
yeah,
what are you doing?
And
I don't understand that.
He's not a huge fan of Garfield Parker either.
Like, we already talked about that. He's all right,
unfortunately. So time is rolling on. Let's jump into Amazing Spider-Man 2. Positives?
Do we want to? I mean,
positives?
We could just. Okay, here's the interesting part. I watched Amazing Spider-Man with not high expectations, but higher expectations, and I was disappointed. I watched this one with low expectations, and it was actually better than I remember it being. It's still, to me, the worst Spider-Man movie, but it's definitely better than I remember it being, and there are a couple reasons why. Andrew Garfield Spider-Man / Gwen Stacy and Emma Stone, like their chemistry in Amazing Spider-Man 2 gets much better, again, the character.
It's like sickeningly sweet in the second one. The two of them are adorable together.
Yeah,
They
they're
really
great in
are.
this one. And then the first one, it's like awkward. And I know they're just like meeting and stuff like that, but like every scene in the first one, I cringed when they were together because it was so awkward. Like, and I get they're trying to convey that he's an awkward guy and it's an awkward relationship, but they overdid it, I think, on that.
Yeah.
In this one, their chemistry is really good, and I didn't really expect that. I guess I was like, I knew going in I didn't like Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker, so I kind of already determined it was bad. I tried to go in with like non-bias in just the whole movie, and if you take out the fact that Jamie Foxx is Electro, like if you just make him a villain, a nameless villain, he's not that bad. He's definitely not Electro. But if you just had him as a random villain and just renamed him like, I don't know, Lightning Bolt or some electric term,
Just something.
like he's something electric. He's not that bad. He's like the Max Dillon in the comics is very arrogant, like making smart remarks about everything. And Jamie Foxx is like the complete opposite in this movie. But I will say he was like charming. Like I laughed and had fun with him in this movie. The one weird part was like when he's turning into Electro, he's got that gap thing and it just disappears. Like he doesn't have a gap tooth anymore when he becomes Electro. It fixes his tooth. But
yeah, like random stuff like that.
As a villain, he's not that bad. And the theme, the electronica theme when he is in the movie is actually kind of cool. I didn't mind that.
Just
So-
at the chat, Nitro saying, I think Fox played Electro was a stake to the heart of ASM2. And then K Jink, hi Cage, how's it going, man? Andrew Garfield, Peter Parker is bad. Like, yeah, we kind of talked about that earlier on. See, I think the idea of doing Electro, I like the fact that they did Electro. Because I kind of like the fact that, kind of like the Lizard, they did someone different.
Right.
We've not seen Electro on screen before, and Electro is a great villain. My problem is that they took someone like Jamie Foxx, who's got this amazing amount of charm and personality, and removed it from him.
Right.
Like Max Dillon is this, even as like this geeky guy, at least there's something to him. The moment he becomes Electro, he has no personality.
Right, true.
He has none.
That is very true.
He is completely deadpanned, nothing. He doesn't even have anger towards Spider-Man. He says that he's angry, but then he's like, it's like, there's nothing to you. Like, at least you were the geeky guy. Get angry at your heroes, like, having a go at you. Like, no, nothing. Not a thing.
Right. Right. You're definitely not wrong about that. And that's what I remember about this movie is that Electro
hold
was
on a
the
second.
worst.
Sora. Whoa. In the chat. Sora, man.
Sora.
Nitrogen B, greater than Comics than Cross.
Wow.
Which I'm assuming is a
okay.
shot at Cross. I'm like,
Calling you out.
we're going to have words, man. We're going to have words, man. You're coming in here at the end of my podcast picking a fight, dude.
Say, Nitro, you're in the chat. How did you feel about missing this episode, honestly? Because I know you're a big Spider-Man fan too. Like, what were your thoughts about not being able to be on this one? Because he was on
Let's put it this way. A couple of weeks ago, he wasn't here. He popped into chat. He's not left since he came in today, so I'm assuming he's trying to get as involved as he can be.
Yeah, for real.
I agree. Jamie Foxx should have been another villain. So yeah. Oh, don't worry. We'll have plenty of stuff for him to get involved in. There's always going to be Spider-Man stuff to talk.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We'll make sure Nitro's here and we'll bring you back so that we can, like, I don't know, talk about the Japanese Spider-Man or something really random.
Yes. Yes.
So it's like, LOL, love you, buddy.
Oh man.
But yeah, that was my issue with Jamie Foxx as Electro. It was like, there's no personality for what should be an amazingly charismatic
Right, like
villain.
before he becomes Electro, he's charming
don't
and
even
fun.
make him like the guy for the comics. Don't make him like Electro in the comics, because obviously, like, even his look and everything's based on the Ultimate Universe is Electro in that design. So you're going a totally different direction. Just make him Jamie Foxx's character. Just give him that personality. Give him something.
Yeah, he definitely, as with a personality, is basically nothing after that. As a villain, and surprisingly, I remember just Electro. I remember everything about Electro being horrible, and he didn't look that bad until he got his suit. When he gets his suit, it's like, I don't know, man. It just doesn't look as good
You mean
anymore.
his magic suit?
His magic suit, yeah, it
The
just appears
electricity
out of nowhere.
creates out of nowhere.
It's probably made out of electricity because it just appears out of thin air. And
Electricity makes black leather, like,
and he's got like some electric magical boxer shorts when he's getting electrocuted too.
Yeah,
Like
because that would be
that's
a
very
thing.
convenient, you know. Like, I mean, they wanted to make it a family friendly movie, and here he is with boxer shorts on when they're electrocuting him and torturing him and stuff like that. So
I mean, that's very
convenient
considerate.
for them.
You don't get torturers that are that considerate, you know. It's like,
True.
So yeah, like Electro is like, I think they let him down, like, and also the fact of like Electro gets like lost in the mix of everything.
Yeah.
Of the 50 million stories,
right. And I think sorry, keep going. No, I'll wait.
Sorry, I'm just watching like the chats now flying by.
Yeah.
It's like, you've all came into chat now when we're talking about Amazing Spider-Man 2, aren't you? I don't know where I lost chat. Accept your accent. I will not keep it. Nitro says, I think I love you, Sora.
I think,
I guess.
Sora, just to comment on that, everybody in both of these movies probably did the best with what they were written for. Like, these are not bad actors and actresses. They did a fine job of acting, but the writing in both of these movies is just complete garbage. So they did what they could with the roles that they were given, but that still doesn't really do them any favors.
Well, that's it. I mean, we talked about it with Amazing Spider-Man 1. I think the same with the second one. The casting for the most part was pretty good, apart from a couple that I'll mention.
Yeah.
It's like, but yeah, they can only work with what they've been given. You know, there's only so much.
Right. Yeah. We'll talk. Okay. Well, we might as well dive into this now because we're close. But
yeah, let me just catch the rest of the chat here. Just Kay saying, I'm not that familiar with Electro from the Ultimate Universe. It's the same as the original Electro in Earth 616. As far as I know, I've not dove into like Electro in the Ultimate Universe, but apart from like the look is a lot more like it. It's this blue electric look that he's got going on. For the most part, it's pretty much the same character.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They're basically the same character. They just look different.
All right, Nitro, take care, man. Nitro's going to have to bounce out. We'll see you again, and Nitro will be back next week, so make sure you tune in, guys, to see him. So yeah, let's jump into the villains. There's so much to talk about in this, so many other stories, but let's hit the villains first. Let's hit the major villain of the movie, you know, the big one that everyone came to see, Rhino.
The Paul Giamatti Rhino, like, Sony, what are you thinking?
There's so many things wrong with just that one alone.
This is probably the worst villain casting of all time. Like,
listen, I love Paul Giamatti.
Same.
He's a phenomenal actor. What were you thinking, casting him as the Rhino and making him like a Russian mobster? Like, what was that?
He is the worst. Oh my god! And he's wearing like this. He's like this little chubby guy, who Paul Giamatti is. So like, nothing against him. They wrote him like they just needed to get a different actor. Like, Rhino is this big, beefy dude who's literally got a rhino suit melded to his body. He's giant. Yeah. Instead, they get a teeny little guy that's got a.
But he gets a big rhino suit though. He gets a big
rhino suit. Yeah, he's got the battle rhino suit. Like, what are you thinking? Oh my gosh. Okay. That's what I was gonna say about Rhino. Why even make him Rhino? If you're just gonna put a guy in a big mech suit, just make him a whole new villain at that point. Yeah, he's not even Rhino. He's just a guy in a big battle suit.
Chat's all agreeing. Chat's like Cage saying Rhino's crap. Hollywood Bowen saying Rhino. Why? Sora saying they should have cast me. Apparently, I'd have done a better job. I would have.
If you're Oscorp, and that's another gripe I have. At the end of the movie, Oscorp turns out to be the one, and of course, this is because Sony at this point is trying to make a Sinister Six movie. So they're like saying, "Oh, Oscorp made all of this tech that they're going to give out to villains," and you see the Rhino suit and blah blah blah. That's at the end of Amazing Spider-Man. And then you see,
because he appears at the very start and at the very end. He like bookends this movie.
Yeah, just leave him out. Like, if you're gonna make Oscorp, if you're gonna make a giant battle suit, what is the freaking point of making it a rhino? That makes absolutely no sense. Just make it a giant battle suit. Like at the end when he like is in his mech suit and conveniently taking down his face shield, like some cop could literally just shoot him in the head and it would all be over.
Yeah,
Like,
like
conveniently
nobody
take
takes
down
that
his face
shot at
shield.
the end. Like really, nobody took that shot. I'd have taken that
Why?
shot.
Why?
You know what I mean? It's
They're all
like,
sitting there like just waiting for him to do something. And then and then he puts it down, and then his mech rhino suit goes down on all fours and charges while it's firing rockets and missiles at
see when that
Spider-Man.
goes in all fours, does that mean he's like lying like that?
Yeah,
Like on the ground? Because he was standing
makes-
upright a minute ago and then it goes like on all fours. Like, what happened?
This makes no sense whatsoever. Dumbest villain like almost ever in the history.
Oh, you've
of
got to
comic
admit
books.
though, that fight scene's amazing at the very end. That
True.
was.
I mean, it is sweet how Spider-Man just like takes that manhole cover and he's just like flipping it around, dodging all the missiles and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm so
But-
glad we got to see that fight. I mean, it's like it'd be horrible if like that where it cut off in the trailer was the end of the movie.
That would have been just awful. It would have ruined the movie if we missed out on that. Oh my gosh. Okay, so now that I'm over Rhino, why Sony? Why did you do that? This is the real travesty of this movie. Like Rhino is a footnote in a terrible movie. Green Goblin is the reason why Amazing Spider-Man 2 is such a bad movie. The Harry Osborn Green Goblin, first of all, is the dumbest character in this movie. And they played it so wrong. Like you could have done something cool with this, and I'm not faulting the actor. Like it's not the actor's fault, but man, they wrote
I think
Harry
he was
Osborn
such a wrong
so
casting for it.
badly.
I don't think he was the right casting for.
And, yeah, I don't think he was the right one. He again, this is another case of like he did the best that he could.
He's a
with
decent
the-
actor. When he's in something that's
Yeah,
worthwhile, he's
right.
a decent actor. This just wasn't the role for him.
Right.
And the
yeah,
cast
exactly.
and the writing
They
and
wrote
directing
this
didn't help.
terribly, and then casted him based on their terrible role that they wrote. So he again does the best that he can in that role, but it's a terrible role already. So like this is the reason why to me this is the worst Spider-Man movie. This Harry Osborn is just complete garbage. Nothing like the movies, nothing like anything. They literally wrote this guy in because he's edgy. And that's the sole purpose of him in this movie is to be edgy.
His story arc
So-
makes no sense. That's my problem with him. It's like,
just
okay,
garbage.
first of all, you kill Norman Osborn at the start of this movie.
Yeah,
The real Green Goblin.
right. And that was
No one looks at Harry and goes, you know what, I prefer him to Norman's. No one. We've got some chat coming in. Sora saying, can we talk about how if they had villains in the Marvel 2 universe with Spider-Girl, it would have been so much better. Any villain would have been better at this point. to be
literally, yeah, the villains in this movie are
In case
are
saying, I felt like they
pretty
tried to
dang bad.
make Amazing Spider-Man as a mix of the Ultimate Universe and another universe. Terrible Harry Osborn Green Goblin choice in the second movie. Yeah, they took a
Agreed.
lot of inspiration for the Ultimate Universe, and I honestly think that was the MCU's involvement, because the MCU takes some things from the Ultimate Universe to
Right.
translate into their movies. I think they went, oh, they're doing it, we can do it. And like, no. But like
Yeah,
his story arc makes no sense. Because like first of all, you've killed off Norman Osborn, you've killed off Spider-Man's main villain, arguably. You know, it's like arguably against like Venom and Doc Ock and some of the others, but like arguably his greatest and biggest villain you kill off. Then we've got Harry left. Harry now terrified because his father died of this disease, this goblin disease. That he's worried that it's going to end up
named the
like
goblin.
killing him, and he thinks Spider-Man's blood is the cure. Not quite sure why he thinks Spider-Man's blood is going to be the possible cure-all. That kind of comes out of nowhere as
He's
well.
got no other option. He says that like 26 times in the movie. He's got
This
no
is
other
true.
option. So
He's got no
he's going
other
to take
option.
Spider-Man's blood, obviously.
You know, so he talks to Spider-Man. Spider-Man's like not going to do it, and I'm like, first of all, I'm not quite sure why Spider-Man's not going to do it. This is like, because this isn't just like some random asking. Like, this is Peter Parker's like supposedly best friend. We know they're best friends because they tell us. We've not seen him. He wasn't mentioned in the last movie, but they tell us they're
Yeah,
best friends, so
yeah.
they're best friends.
Right. just
And he says
conveniently is
no.
like, oh, I'm gonna call this random guy up that I haven't seen for 16 years or 10 years
He
or
says
whatever they say.
no. It's like, that's your friend. You're not going to give them a vial to at least check out. And then second of all, like, he starts freaking out like he's about to die. What age was your dad when he just died? Like 50s, 60s? You're what? 20 something? You've got some time.
Apparently not, according to the rest of this movie.
Apparently
but,
not, because he starts looking at every possible way to fix this, and I'm like,
like,
you've got time.
He's acting like the guy is gonna die in the next like month.
Yeah, he's like,
And-
I've got a week to live. Like, what? Like, out of the universe, can I look at things and find something that's going to cure me? This goblin
Side
toxin
note-
thing, this has never been tested in anyone. Well, I've got nothing to lose. 40 years of your life?
Yeah,
You know?
apparently it was way more advanced in him, even though he had never felt any symptoms besides the shaking of his hands.
Yeah, it felt shaking in his hands, and I'm like, and they kind of make a deal of like that's an early stage, and I'm like, I'm sure your dad had that at your age and all. Like, but like it was a while from shaky hands to deathbed.
Yeah,
But-
for real. And speaking of deathbed, Norman Osborn. Okay, this is just a side note. He's got literal goblin hands. Like, he's got these giant hands with humongous claws on his hands. Like,
Why? Why is he a literal goblin? Again, I'm like, is this like part of like the Ultimate Universe idea? Because
Right,
in the
like,
Ultimate
you-
Universe, he turns into like
right,
an
he
actual
turns into a
goblin
literal
creature.
goblin in the Ultimate Universe. So maybe you're taking aspects of that, but if you're gonna go for that, go for it. Don't do
Yeah.
a little half. Maybe he's a little goblin-y, but not that goblin-y.
Yeah, it's like go
like-
all out. If you're going to do it, let's do this. Let's
Yeah,
go
exactly.
all the way. And I'm like, but like they do this
Yeah.
whole story with Harry though. Like he for some reason decides he's going to like get Electro to help him. I've watched this guy. I'm like, he's unstable. Like never in my wildest dreams would I think that's the guy I need in my team. But
Right,
for
and
some reason he does.
I guess in his defense, like, he more just releases him to do what he's going to do, but still at the same time, like, how do you think this is going to turn out for you? And really, he just uses him as a distraction at
He's
the
a
end of the movie.
distraction.
But
To try and like also as well because he gets like Oscorp taken away from him. We randomly get Felicia Hardy in this movie. Shout out
okay,
to
so
Felicity.
side note on that, I wrote in my notes, I kind of like the random Easter eggs they give us, but it was super weird that
But
she was.
the problem
in that
is that you
role.
know
Like,
that they
didn't
weren't
make
meant
any
to be.
sense.
The problem is they weren't meant to be Easter eggs though. That's the whole point of this movie was the fact that they had a Black Cat movie set up. They had a Sinister Six
True,
movie
yeah,
set
okay,
up.
okay,
They
I
had
see what you're
all
saying now.
they had all of this set up. So like this wasn't Easter eggs. This was
Right.
hinting. This could be
This
our
was
Black
planning.
Cat. All of
Right.
this stuff you see in Oscorp, that's going to be the Sinister Six
Well,
movie.
I'm okay with that because I mean, even in MCU movies, you see what you think are Easter eggs, and maybe they were intended to be Easter eggs, but Marvel like takes them and they're like, oh, you know what?
Yeah,
We're
you
gonna
set
run
up
with this.
stuff.
People like those.
But you
but
don't
yeah, and then-
literally build your movie round about it though. The problem watching Amazing Spider-Man 2, the movie was built around the same issue that freaking the Mummy had in the Dark Universe.
Oh yeah.
Was the movie wasn't built to be a movie, it was built to be a setup for a shared universe.
Right.
That's the
Yeah.
difference that everyone keeps getting wrong that Marvel didn't. Marvel created good movies and made sure
Right.
that they could slot them together. It's like everyone else says, we want a shared universe, but they're not willing to put the 10 years of work that Marvel put into building it.
Yeah.
That's
Definitely.
the difference with it, and that's why we get these random throw-ins.
Yeah. And the other one I would like to mention is they have Alistair Smythe in there, who becomes Spider Slayer.
The Spider
BJ
Slayer.
Novak, of all people, is the one playing Smythe. Like,
I kind of need to see him as like the mutated Smythe, like when he has all the stuff done
that
to
would be
him.
interesting.
I kind of need to
Like-
see what that looks like.
It's so
It's
weird
so
that they go
weird.
from this great cast in Amazing Spider-Man, and then all of a sudden this movie they're like, you know what, we'll keep the great cast from Amazing Spider-Man, but let's also add this totally random assortment of people that are terrible for their roles. Like, I don't know. I mean, obviously Sony was just literally trying to put something together to make a lot of money, but it just, I don't know. It blows my mind that you have this. the weird thing is, I think Spider-Man 2, even though it's a much worse movie, I think it's a more cohesive movie because they do so much jumping around in the Amazing Spider-Man that it's almost like hard to follow the story a little bit.
Oh,
And then you go to here.
I would argue that completely.
Really?
Because like what we've talked about sounds cohesive. But remember, Gwen Stacy is going to England because she's going to be studying there, and he's going to stop being Spider-Man and go with him. Oh, and don't forget, his parents are secret agents, and they were on a plane that went down, and that's what killed them. And he also had a secret bunker with a train in it with all this Oscorp stuff. The Oscorp just never went back and got, apparently, so his dad's stuff's just been left there.
Yeah, it's just his secret lab that nobody else knew about, not even his employer that probably put all the funding into making that thing.
And don't forget Aunt May's struggling because she's studying to be a nurse with all these younger nurses to keep paying off all the bills that they're paying, which are probably setting up for the solo Aunt May movie that they were planning at the time as well. So,
oh boy.
It's like, no. If you want to talk about a movie jumping around, this had like 6 plots going on.
Though, if you and I going back to this, I remember Peter Parker's parents being alive. I must have watched the like extended cut or whatever that has that.
His dad's alive, and there was like a post-credit scene that was like.
And I watched this one in
like,
the theatrical cut, which did not have that in there. So I was almost like surprised that we didn't see that. But then I went back and just read some stuff, and I was like, oh, okay, so that's a part of that.
Yeah, it was something they ended up cutting out, but like his dad's apparently still alive after all of this.
Right. Yeah. Which that part is. I don't even know what to think about that, but the parent storyline, as much as it kind of distracts from the actual Spider-Man storyline, I didn't mind it as much as I thought I would dislike it. And I guess, I don't know, maybe that was just like the nostalgia factor again. Like I hadn't seen this movie forever and I forgot about it. That part of it, but
I don't mind the story itself because, like, if you go into the comics and even the old cartoons and stuff, like his parents were spies. This is actual stuff. I just felt like it was crammed in there.
Right.
Like, you could have built up to that. You could have put stuff, Easter eggs and stuff, and built up to doing something with that. I think they do
an okay job of at least introducing it in the first one, but then they just drop it off. You know, they're like, oh, all right, well, his parents are gone. Okay, bye. You know, like,
but even like that was a great introduction. Like, okay, his parents are a factor in this somehow, so we can lead up to that.
Right.
Spies. We'll pick up right where the first movie started and go back to that and show what happened on the other side, because why not?
Right. Yeah.
Yep. So as our time's kind of pushing on, I want to hit the chat here, and then I want to kind of wrap up with the finale of Amazing Spider-Man 2, because that deserves to be talked about before we finish. And sort of said, I felt Homecoming was trash with the end, but Mysterio, great casting there, but this trash script. Do you mean Far From Home? That was the second one with Tom Holland. That's the one with Mysterio.
I liked that one.
I kind of liked it. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't blown away by it. I think honestly, for me, my favorite part of it was Mysterio, though. The whole concept around how he was created and everything was so cool.
Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio was fantastic.
And in case saying they gave us a half-ass Goblin, it's like, boy, did they ever. Let's talk about that. And just as well as we're starting to wrap up the podcast, if you guys are listening and here on Twitch and haven't followed us yet, go ahead and hit that follow button. Help us get that little bar up to 200 followers. Can keep growing the channel. And if I can pull up my thing, also make sure you follow us on our social media, if I can find it. There we go. And follow us on our social media and to keep up to date when we go live on here and the different stuff that we do as part of Comics in the Cross. Get our archives up on YouTube where this will be going up. And then also if you want to get some merch or support us on our Patreon, there's some links there. I just want to throw those out as we go on, guys. And as we wrap up, we'll let Iso do shouts out for the Infinity Bros stuff at the end as well.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to throw it out there since we've got some people popping in that aren't usually here just to drop some follows. But yeah, the finale, Amazing Spider-Man 2. We're going to jump past Electro's Itsy Bitsy Spider music performance.
When I didn't even remember that. When I heard that, I was like, are you serious?
Yeah. And I'm like,
they did that. Okay. All right then.
What's the more confusing part of that scene? The fact of like that he for some reason decides to play that tune, or working out how he's doing it?
Like,
jumping from all these different poles, apparently playing musical notes.
Electro and a personality, maybe that would be a thing
Yeah,
you
if he was
could
a
do.
little
But with
off
his
kilter
zero
personality.
personality, it was so jarring. It was just like, what? This guy who is not joking, he wants to kill Spider-Man. He's got no jokes whatsoever, and he's playing itsy bitsy spider on the grid. Like, what?
Yeah,
No
I
way.
just. But anyway, we take out Electro. For some reason, Gwen Stacy shows up because, you know, when fighting supervillains, me being there physically is going to help, obviously.
Yeah,
I'm like,
obviously.
I don't know what she was thinking with that one, but okay.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, that's
then,
what
and
Andrew Garfield
then,
said too. He was like, "What are you doing here?"
and then he arrives, cackling away, flying on his glider. We get Harry
Worst part
Osborn's.
of all Spider-Man movies combined is when this Hobgoblin, Spider, what the heck this thing is, Green Goblin, whatever you want to call it, shows up, and it's just bad.
He
It's just
looks
straight up bad.
so bad.
This Green Goblin is the reason why, to me, this is the worst Spider-Man movie. Like, nothing can even, you can go into, sure, what's his name, Topher Grace as Venom in Spider-Man 3. You can go into even James Franco as Hobgoblin in Spider-Man 3. They're not nearly half as bad as
No.
this Green Goblin.
I was
This is
thinking,
the
like,
worst villain ever in Spider-Man history.
I was actually thinking this is very set up in a similar way to like Topher Grace's Venom. Like, there's a lot of stuff that happens with him appearing in the movie that you think could build up to something big. And then for like the last 10-20 minutes of the movie, he becomes a villain, and he like Topher turns into Venom, and like he turns into the Hobgoblin, and it's like, no, you had him set up as a big bad for something in the future. Don't cram him in, especially when you've already got another main villain. On Spider-Man's 3 case, 2 main villains. It's like, come on, don't do that.
Yeah, man.
And then what does he do? What does he do? We don't even do anything. They have this half-assed fight. He just decides to randomly kidnap Gwen Stacy because apparently he's mad that Spider-Man wouldn't give him his blood. And I'm like, so he takes revenge on him? That's a kind of half-baked thing.
Okay, again, this is another thing that just had my eyes rolling so hard. He flies in. He's in between Gwen Stacy and Spider-Man. He looks back at Gwen Stacy. Looks back at Peter Parker. Looks back at Gwen Stacy. Looks back at Peter Parker like 6 times. And then it's like, oh, now you realize that. Okay, now we can move on with the movie after this 15-second sequence of you figuring out that this is Peter Parker.
Well, you know, the
Like,
movie was like 15 seconds short. We had to pad for those 15 seconds, you know?
Those 15 seconds. So they're like, where can we cram this 15 seconds in? And
It's like, oh
let's
my
do it right
goodness.
here. Oh, man, that got me. I was like, okay, yeah, you know what? During the Spider-Man 3 movie, when Peter Parker is doing his Saturday Night Live strut, I roll my eyes, but I'm also laughing during that. There was no laughing during this. I was completely cringe eye rolling.
Oh yeah,
the
it
whole
was just bad.
time during the Green Goblin, Peter Parker interactions. Ugh, yikes! And I will say, like, the visual effects are really good, especially in this last part where Gwen Stacy dies. Like, they do a really good job at like the visual effects and the fight and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But man, that they, like you said, they crammed that whole interaction into like 2 minutes, like less than 2 minutes maybe. I don't know what the exact amount of time it is in the movie, but you build up the Green Goblin for this whole movie, and then all of a sudden he's dead in 2 minutes. Like, just, it's a travesty of a part in this movie. It's really unfortunate.
Yeah, it's totally taken apart. Like, her death is just kind of, it's thrown at the end. I know they tried to build it up and stuff, and even if you go back and watch it now, there's foreshadowing at the start and stuff, like with her graduation speech, and
right,
it feels unwarranted. It feels unwarranted that this was a death scene, and it's done so quickly. I mean, if you look at the comics and the death of Gwen Stacy and that, there was so much build up and so much rivalry between the Goblin and Spider-Man that led to that moment of the Goblin setting up the situation where Spider-Man killed her. it was just such a throwaway thing in this, and it's like,
I'll say I appreciate first of all that Gwen Stacy dies, that they take that jump and
Yeah.
make it the comic book accuracy of that, and the way that she dies is like very similar to the way she dies in the comics, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And again, the visual effects in that scene, they do make it very dramatic, and I did like that and appreciate it. But yeah, again, with everything in this movie, a lot of build up and not much payoff, unfortunately. And like, again, I think the chemistry between Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone is great, which makes for a pretty sad ending, honestly. But yeah, again, everything is just crammed into the last 10-minute fight scene or whatever, and you're left kind of like, oh, so that's it, huh? Okay. All right. Here we are at the end of the movie, and in comes Rhino. And you're like, okay, I should have turned this off 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, like, it's like, no, that was I get they're trying to show like he's getting back on the horse sort of thing, and he's going back to being Spider-Man. I'm like, it just.
And I will say though, like, Rhino's almost as bad as the Green Goblin in this movie, but when he comes and stands behind that kid, I had like tears in my eyes. Like, that was a really emotional,
a really cool scene.
Like him coming back, and like that's one of Spider-Man's like main themes in his life is like perseverance. Like, no matter what happens, he gets back up and he is fighting no matter what, basically. And that was really cool. And then the fact that like he is, and I think this is almost even better than the Raimi trilogy in this sense. Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man is like looking out for random people, and that kid specifically, I think that's the kid that earlier in the movie he had helped fight off some bullies, right? And I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he fought him off, and like he was happy. He
was
talking
cool,
about
like,
his
connection
thing.
scene.
Yeah.
Like, he has a really good friendly neighborhood Spider-Man feel to him, and that
he does.
I think that pays off with this final scene, which is the only good part about this whole last, I don't know, 10 minutes of the movie or something like that. But that was really cool. And then the Rhino.
And then the Rhino happened. But
Wolf, man. And okay, so now that we're done talking about it, I had some interactions with some people this morning on Twitter that said that Spider-Man 3 is the worst Spider-Man movie. Here's my final thoughts on that. I won't go too deep into it since we're already 2.5 hours into this podcast.
Yeah, pretty much.
But if I'm looking at it from an objective standpoint, Amazing Spider-Man 2 is arguably a better movie than Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man 3 holds a special place in my heart because it's the first Spider-Man movie that I saw in theaters. I love Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. The black suit in Spider-Man 3 that Tobey Maguire wears is awesome. I love that suit. And I like the final reason that it comes down to Amazing Spider-Man 2 being worse than Spider-Man 3 is Harry Osborn in Amazing Spider-Man 2. He's such a terrible villain that he transcends the whole Spider-Man 3 movie. Again, like I said before, yeah, I roll my eyes. It's cringy when Spider-Man is doing his strut down the street and he's dancing in the doorway. But I'm laughing during that because it's got the cheesy comic book feel factor. Amazing Spider-Man 2 has virtually zero cheesy comic book feel to it. It tries to be edgy, it tries to be real, and it just doesn't work. So that's why, in my opinion, Amazing Spider-Man 2 is worse than Spider-Man 3. I've been like thinking about it. I almost think, in my eyes, Spider-Man 3 is better than Amazing Spider-Man, which I know a lot of people probably would be hesitant to give that. I know I was talking to Max Mosier this morning. He fully thinks Spider-Man 3 is better than both Amazing Spider-Man movies. I don't know if I'm ready to make that statement, but
I don't know if I'd say that, but like I can see where he's coming from with it, though.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
I can
It's
understand that
close,
argument.
man. It's close because all of these movies are big missed opportunities, shall we say.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, those are my final thoughts on why Amazing Spider-Man 2 is my least favorite Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, for me it's probably the same. It's probably my least favorite, just because it is the most all over the place. At least Spider-Man 3 kind of has a direction it's going. I just feel like Amazing Spider-Man 2 is just all over the place.
The whole both Amazing Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man 2 are so just disjointed and not good, not well written scripts and stories. Like it's just not good. They nailed some things, but really big missed opportunities and missed execution in those movies, unfortunately.
All right, we should probably call this up a wrap here, as we're starting to push the 2.5 hour limit.
Oh man!
Last one in the comments there, just shout out to Cage was saying wrong actor for Venom as they crammed it into Spider-Man 3. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Cage, if you're a streamer as well, let us know. I'd love to give you a shout out. But I'll hand over to Isaac. If Isaac, you want to do some plugging for the bros and for what you guys are doing and got coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a part of a group called the Infinity Bros. We're a group of 6 guys who have a podcast. We stream on Twitch. We just honestly like to have a good time, talk about nerdy stuff. So if you would like to be a part of that, we've got a Discord, we've got Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. And you can check out theinfinitybros.com for more information and all of our links and everything. We are on episode 47 of our podcast that should be coming out very soon, either today or tomorrow. And I believe we have a review of Dominion in our podcast this week, as well as on the Daily Snap on theinfinitybros.com. So check those out. If you're interested in nerdy stuff, I mean, that's kind of our thing. We just cover a wide array of nerdy culture in our podcast, in streaming, in our website. So definitely give us a follow and check us out if you have the time and are willing to do that.
Absolutely. And for everyone in the chat, I've thrown up the links into the chat there, so go ahead and follow them. Casey, and I'll check you out. It's like I love to talk about comic book movies too. I'm glad you enjoyed the chat, and it was good to have you here today, Cage. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, go ahead and follow us here at Comics in the Cross, and follow us on social media as well, and go and check out the Infinity Bros. Great friends of ours, absolutely love the stuff that they're doing. So let me check. We're going to go ahead and quickly raid someone here on Twitch. Just going to tag someone and show them some love. I think we're going to do a Good Kid Dad today because he's streaming. I used to try and stream smaller streamers to give them some attention, but we'll do a Good Kid Dad. So
yeah.
So we love you all, guys. You all have an amazing week, and we will see you next week. Or well, Nitro will see you all next week. He's going to be doing either an art stream or a gaming stream. I am actually off next week. First time like properly taking time off for the podcast. So I'm going to be taking some time off with some family coming into town, and then the following week we'll be back to talk with you. And then remember, at the end of the month as well, we're going to be talking with Dr. Bell regarding the book Dominion again. But thank you for everyone that came and checked it out. If you are still in the chat, stick with us so we can go raid someone, and have an absolutely amazing day. Excelsior.